Chapter 3044. Who are you? Shi Tianqing looked at Lung Qingwei and raised his brows. Those following behind Shi Tianqing were all special disciples of Shixian Mountain. Shixianing was also among them. When they saw Lung Qingwei, they were all stunned. So, when Su Fong slapped Lung Qingwei, he purposely wanted to punish this arrogant girl by injecting a bit of poison into her skin. Although it was just a little bit, it turned Lung Qingwei's face black and pus flowed in some places. She looked like an evil ghost. Lung Qingwei had also taken powerful antidote pills, but she was unable to dispel the poison. As a result, she became like this. Even Shi Tianqing could not recognize her. You are junior sister Lung Qingwei? Why did you become like this? Shi Tianqing finally recognized Lung Qingwei from her aura. He could not help but be shocked. Lung Qingwei gritted her teeth and pointed at Su Fong. It's that madman. He humiliated you. I was so angry that I argued with him, but was humiliated by him instead. Shi Tianqing knew Lung Qingwei's personality. In Shixian, as long as she did not bully others, he would be grateful. Who would dare to bully her? It was clear that Lung Qingwei had kicked an iron plate this time and suffered a great loss. What Shi Tianqing did not understand was that the person guarding Profound Opening Gate was a powerful elder. Why did he not stand up for Lung Qingwei? Hearing Lung Qingwei's words, Shi Tianqing smiled embarrassedly. Junior sister Qingwei, did you provoke a powerful person this time? Lung Qingwei gritted her teeth and said, that person is indeed powerful, but extremely arrogant. Junior sister did not want to provoke him, but he said that senior brother Tianqing was not as good as Su Fong and was not even fit to carry Su Fong's shoes. Junior sister was so angry that she argued with him, but was humiliated by him. Shi Tianqing's brows furrowed. His sharp eyes swept across the figure sitting in front of him. Losing to Su Fong was a setback to Shi Tianqing's Dao heart. He saw it as a great humiliation, and it became a taboo. No one dared to mention it in front of him. Lung Qingwei's words caused Western Profound Tianqing to have killing intent towards that person. After senior brother's entrance test, I will seek justice for junior sister. Shi Tianqing nodded and strode toward the Profound Opening Gate. After losing to Su Fong in the Jiuxuan Heavens Chosen, Shi Tianqing could be said to be courageous after knowing shame. Going out to train this time, advancing to the Dao Profound Realm, his strength skyrocketing. He wanted to go and test it out impatiently. Other matters naturally had to be put aside. After obtaining Western Profound Tianqing's promise, Lung Qingwei was extremely pleased. She glared fiercely at Su Fong, and her eyes that were about to narrow into slits flashed with cold and sharp killing intent. With senior brother Tianqing taking action for me, let's see how you die. Young Master Tianqing is about to take the entrance test. This time, Tianqing of Shixian will definitely be able to break the record set by Lord Wine Saint, and his name will shake Shixian. Seeing the figure walking towards Tongxian Gate, the crowd cheered. The other cultivators outside Tongxian Gate also rushed over. In front of Tongxian Gate, over 10,000 people gathered all at once. At this moment, Shi Tianqing was the center of attention. The powerhouse guarding Tongxian Gate said to Shi Tianqing with a smile, Shi Tianqing, you'll definitely be able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat this time. Many thanks for elders' praise. Shi Tianqing nodded his head and walked under Tongxian Gate without consulting anyone. A Xian Guang gushed out from within his body, turning into one light wheel after another. There were shockingly 9,000 light wheels, all of which were manifested from thoughts, continuously changing the myriad phenomena of heaven and earth. This scene made the many cultivators in the periphery burst into an uproar once more. Just advancing to the Dao Profound Realm, Shi Tianqing was actually able to release 9,000 thoughts. This was an ability that only upper Dao Profound Realm powerhouses had. It could be seen how extraordinary Shi Tianqing was. This Shixian Tianqing is indeed extraordinary. After advancing to the Tao Profound realm, his strength is more than 10 times stronger than before. However, it's just upper Tao Profound realm. While I'm already preparing to assault the Tao Void realm at this moment, and already flung him far behind. Even if his strength increased by 10 times, the distance between us is still very far. Su Fang looked at Shixian Tianqing and revealed a disdainful sneer. Shixian Tianqing, the number one genius of Shixian, was already not qualified to be Su Fang's opponent when he was Heaven's Chosen in the Zhoushuan. Now, he was even less qualified. Boom, boom, boom. On both sides of Tong Xian Gate's door pillars, divine patterns and myriad phenomena diagrams suddenly erupted with 10,000 Xianguang, enveloping Shixian Tianqing within. Astonishing divine might battered Shixian Tianqing wave after wave, wanting to blast him out of Tong Xian Gate. However, the myriad phenomena heavenly wheel released by Shixian Tianqing shattered the divine might released by Tong Xian Gate layer by layer. The door pillars on both sides of Tong Xian Gate lit up one after another, releasing even more astonishing divine might. However, under Shixian Tianqing's heavenly wheel, they shattered layer by layer. Just like this, Tong Xian Gate lit up at an astonishing speed, indicating Shixian Tianqing's heaven-defying rise. 1,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 1,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, Tong Xian Gate lit up bit by bit, rising all the way to 70,000 feet before gradually slowing down. However, it still did not stop. 80,000 feet. Under everyone's gazes, the divine patterns and diagrams on both sides of Tong Xian Gate lit up at a height of 80,000 feet. Whoosh! Exclamations and exclamations resounded like spring thunder in front of Tong Xian Gate. When Wine Saint took the Tao Profound realm test back then, he was only a little more than 80,000 feet. 80,000 feet. It meant that he would have the achievements of a Tao Saint expert in the future, or even higher. Everyone was witnessing the rise of a Tao Saint expert. How could they not be shocked? Rise! Shixian Tianqing let out an angry roar as he opened his mouth and spat out a stream of energy. It instantly transformed into a wheel of light that was 100 feet in size. A terrifying divine might that could evolve from the heavenly Tao erupted. Boom! Tong Xian Gate's oppressive divine might was shattered once again. The divine patterns and diagrams at a height of 85,000 feet suddenly bloomed with resplendent Xianguang. In an instant, the entire object was illuminated by the light as the boundless Xianguang rushed out of the barrier and shone in all directions. 85,000 feet. Shixian Tianqing actually broke Wine Saint's record and even surpassed it by a large margin. Young Master Tianqing is mighty. Shixian Tianqing will definitely become a powerful Tao Saint in the future. He even has a chance to become a supreme Daozu. Shixian Tianqing will soar into the sky from now on. Everyone will look up to him. No one in Shixian Divine Realm can surpass him. Fortune, what a great fortune. I can actually witness the rise of Shixian Tianqing. It was unknown how many people were crying out in surprise, how many people were shocked, and how many people were in awe. Shixian Tianqing staggered as his aura instantly became dispirited. Immediately after, he was blasted out by Tong Xian Gate's divine might. It was obvious that he had expended a lot of energy. However, his spirit soared as he displayed the loftiness of an expert. Everyone looked up to him. Congratulations, young Master Tianqing. Congratulations. Congratulations to my Shixian. From now on, another powerful genius has appeared. The experts guarding Tong Xian Gate, as well as Lin Shuang, Shixianing, and other geniuses, all came forward to congratulate Shixian Tianqing. Their eyes were filled with reverence, and their tone was full of flattery. At this moment, Shixian Tianqing was like a blazing sun in the sky. No matter how bright the stars were, they were dim in comparison. No one could compete with him in glory. Shixian Tianqing felt as if he was floating amidst everyone's flattery and congratulations. A special disciple of Shi Xian shouted. Last time at Jiushuan's Heaven's Choice, Su Fang relied on Daozu's favor and treasures to win against young Master Tianqing and Hu Ditian. Now that he meets Su Fang again, young Master Tianqing will definitely be able to crush him. Shi Xianing also said domineeringly that Su Fang is just a petty person intoxicated by success. He can be arrogant for a while, but can he be arrogant forever? When he comes to Shi Xian, my elder brother will definitely teach him a lesson. Shi Xian Tianqing smiled casually, but he also felt pity in his heart. What a pity. Even if I beat Su Fang, I won't have a chance like Jiushuan's Heaven's Choice. What a pity. Lung Qingyu went forward and said, Senior Sect Brother Tianqing, it seems that someone is very disdainful of your performance just now. Finishing, she pointed in the direction of Su Fang. Su Fang was sitting cross-legged in the back and was blocked by the crowd. As Lung Qingyu pointed, the crowd hurriedly moved to the sides to reveal Su Fang. Sure enough, it was just as Lung Qingyu had said. Everyone's faces were either filled with shock, respect, or reverence. Only Su Fang sat there calmly with a wisp of a faint smile that revealed disdain at the corners of his mouth. Lin Shuang said, This person is just a madman. He insulted Brother Tianqing before and has such an expression now. He is just jealous of Brother Tianqing. There is no need to lower yourself to his level. This person looked refined and noble, but he was actually very vicious. He was purposefully provoking Shi Xian Tianqing. Shi Xian Tianqing had not clearly seen Su Fang's appearance before. When he saw that icy mask, his heart inexplicably shook. This person is slightly strange. Shi Xian Tianqing was secretly vigilant. Then he said indifferently to Su Fang, Your Excellency does not seem to be a cultivator of Shi Xian. This king has no enmity with Your Excellency, so why are you insulting this king? The scene suddenly calmed down. This person is going to be unlucky. I don't know where this madman came from, but he dares to be arrogant in front of Tongxian Gate and provoke young Master Tianqing. He is courting death. Everyone looked at Su Fang. They all thought that Su Fang was going to be in big trouble. Shi Xian Tianqing was not a magnanimous person. This time, even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. Qian Feng, who was standing next to Su Fang, was so scared that he trembled and his soul almost flew out of his body. Insulting you? Su Fang laughed involuntarily. Then he said indifferently, Someone told the truth, saying that you are inferior to Su Fang. I just smiled, and Lung Qingyu wanted to kill me. Is this considered insulting you? Besides, this is the truth. You are inferior to Su Fang. Who in Jiushuan doesn't know this? Shi Xian Tianqing said indifferently, Yes, you are speaking the truth. This king is inferior to Su Fang. However, that is already history. One failure is nothing. No one can be undefeated forever. Not even the experts of Daozu can do that. After a pause, an arrogant and domineering aura appeared spontaneously. That failure became the courage and motivation for this king's rise. It helped this king rise in the face of adversity. If I fight with Su Fang again, this king will step on his head and prove to the world that he is only a stepping stone for this king. Su Fang snorted disdainfully. I just witnessed the glory of a number 1 genius of Shi Xian divine domain in the Tongxian Gate test, and now I have a taste of your mouth. You are indeed worthy of being number 1 in Shi Xian. Chapter 3045. The elder guarding the profound opening door suddenly sent a message to Western Xian Tianqing. Young Master Tianqing, this person's identity is slightly mysterious. It will not be too late to capture him after investigating. In Western Xian Tianqing's sharp gaze swept over the elder, and he snorted in dissatisfaction. At this time, Su Fang calmly walked in the direction of the profound opening door. Shi Xianying's figure flashed and blocked Su Fang's path. He said murderously, You humiliated this seat's elder brother. Where do you think you're going? Su Fang sneered and said, Just because I spoke the truth, you want to take me to Punishment Hall. Do you not even dare to speak the truth in Western Xian Mountain? Western Xian Tianqing said indifferently, What are you waiting for? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With Shi Xianing at the lead, a dozen Western Xian mountain disciples charged towards Su Fang with smug and vicious smiles. Boom! A vast presence that only Dao profound cultivators could have exploded from Su Fang's body and sent Shi Xianing and the others flying. Su Fang's figure flashed, and he teleported to the profound opening door. Su Fang's actions surprised everyone. Western Xian Tianqing sneered. Dao, profound cultivator? You hid your strength. As expected, you have ulterior motives. You have entered the profound opening door. Do you plan on walking into a trap at Western Xian Mountain? Western Xian Tianqing. Didn't you say you wanted to crush me? I will give you a chance. Su Fang reached out and wiped his face. The faceless mask fell off his face and revealed his true appearance. His presence also changed. Su Fang. Western Xian Tianqing's light changed, and he sank into great shock and surprise. Su Fang, he is Su Fang. Su Fang has also come to Shi Xian. Not just Western Xian Tianqing, everyone was shocked and exclaimed. Even though Tianqing of Shi Xian and the others had repeatedly belittled Su Fang and caused the cultivators of Shi Xian to have a bad impression of Su Fang, thinking that he was just a madman who relied on Shi Xian's Daozu. The cultivators of Shi Xian were all shocked when they saw Su Fang. After all, he was Daozu's direct disciple and the #1 genius of the human race. Who wouldn't be shocked and in awe? So he is Su Fang? The elder guarding the profound opening gate was shocked and rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, he had not acted rashly before. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Su Fang looked at Lung Qingyue and sneered. You said before that not only would I die in your hands, but even my backer would also be unlucky. My master is Dao ancestor Shi Xian, and he is my backer. Do you want him to suffer misfortune? Lung Qingyue's head buzzed and went blank in an instant. She was just a slightly talented descendant of the sovereign of Shi Xian Mountain. Everything of Shi Xian belonged to Shi Xian Daozu. The sovereign was Shi Xian Daozu's disciple. She wanted Shi Xian Daozu to suffer. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless gazes looked at Lung Qingyue, their eyes filled with sympathy. This arrogant and domineering daughter of heaven had kicked an iron plate this time. She was really unlucky. Just being disrespectful to the Dao ancestor was a serious crime. If she was really investigated, she would be expelled from the Western Black Mountain at the very least, and her cultivation would be crippled at the very least. Su Fang, he is Su Fang. I actually stayed with Su Fang for so long. Qian Feng stared at Su Fang, dumbfounded. He was completely dazed. Su Fang looked at Shi Xian Tianqing again. I thought you were someone, but I didn't expect you to be so conceited after just advancing to the Dao profound realm. With such a Dao heart, even if you surpass Senior Brother Wine Saint in the profound opening gate test, your future achievements will be very limited. Becoming a Dao Saint is but a delusion. Su Fang, if you have the ability, fight me again. Shi Xian Tianqing let out a domineering shout, his battle intent soaring as he strode toward the profound opening gate. Fight me? You no longer have the right now. Su Fang smiled loftily. A Xian Guang flashed out from between his brows, turning into the Nine Suns' heavenly wheel that slowly rose above the profound opening gate. In Ponged Song universe, he was looked down upon by Myriad Thunder, true monarch. Then, Myriad Thunder, true monarch tipped off the heavenly coffin, causing him to not only lose his luck spider, but also fall into the heavenly ravine and narrowly escape death. In front of the profound opening gate, Su Fang witnessed the domineering attitude of Lung Qingyue, Shi Xian Tianqing, and other Western Xian Mountain disciples. Su Fang came to Shi Xian alone. If he didn't want to be ostracized and discriminated against, he could only rely on himself. Su Fang also understood that the reason Shi Xian Daozu sent him alone was actually a test for him. Su Fang's way of proving himself was to display his strength and talent. With a domineering attitude, he could sweep through everything and intimidate Shi Xian, causing those who tried to deal with him to fear him. He wanted to use the profound opening gates test to step on Shi Xian Tianqing and show off his power to the entire Western Xian divine realm. Boom! The divine glyphs and diagrams on the pillars on both sides of the profound opening gate lit up instantly, erupting with astonishing divine pressure that descended on Su Fong. Crack, crack, crack. The Nine Suns' heavenly wheel shook, shattering the divine pressure of the profound opening gate. Boom, boom, boom. Wave after wave of pressure and impact rolled towards Su Fong. The Xianguang on the pillars on both sides of the profound opening gate also lit up segment by segment. When it rose to nearly 10,000 feet, the Nine Suns' heavenly wheel shattered. Su Fong is rumored to be a heaven-defying genius. To think that he doesn't live up to his name. A mere 10,000 feet, and he dares to be so arrogant in front of young Master Tianqing? I thought he was amazing. So he's just SOSO. Waves of disdainful sneers sounded from the crowd. Boom! Su Fong no longer hid his strength. His cultivation of the upper Dao profound realm completely erupted, condensing another wheel of light. The heavenly yin-yang wheel soared into the sky. Upper Dao profound realm? Impossible. How could he possibly cross a great step from a Dao Lord cultivator to advance to the upper Dao profound realm in a mere period of time? Shixin Tianqing felt Su Fong's aura, and a boom sounded in his head like thunder. He was so pleased with himself when he advanced to the Dao profound realm, receiving the reverence of the masses. However, compared to Su Fong's speed of improvement, what did he count as? Those Shixin geniuses all had a change in expression, then their gazes became sluggish. Soon after, waves of monstrous waves surged in their hearts. Each cultivator was shocked, looking at Su Fong below the profound opening gate, their eyes full of incredulity. Boom, boom, boom. The heavenly yin-yang wheel shattered wave after wave of pressure and impact, causing the profound opening gate to rise more than 30,000 feet. Immediately after, Su Fong released one heavenly wheel after another in succession. The light on the profound opening gate rose to more than 70,000 feet in one go before gradually slowing down. Su Fong can't make it. Su Fong is indeed an extraordinary genius, even surpassing Shixin Tianqing. What the profound opening gate tests is the divine abilities of Shixin disciples. Su Fong hasn't grasped too many Shixin divine abilities. Wanting to surpass Shixin Tianqing in the profound opening gates test is impossible. I heard that the reason why Su Fong was able to defeat young Master Tianqing and Jiushuan was not just because of his own strength, but also by relying on the heaven-piercing Blood King vine, traveling spider, and some other treasures. In terms of true talent and ability, he's still quite a bit inferior to young Master Tianqing. After Jiushuan's heaven chosen, Su Fong has always been following Lord Daozu this period of time. To be able to advance to the upper Dao profound realm in such a short time, it must be Lord Daozu personally cleansing his marrow. Otherwise, how can there possibly be such a rapid improvement speed? Wouldn't that be heaven-defying? Everyone started discussing animatedly again, wantonly belittling Su Fong Da. In everyone's hearts, Su Fong was an outsider. No one was willing to see an outsider surpass the entire Shixin geniuses. Naturally, they had a kind of rejection towards Su Fong. Who knew? Everyone's clamorous discussion abruptly stopped in the next instant. Su Fong suddenly leaped up and actually flew straight above the profound opening gate, crossing the air, flying to a height of 70,000 feet in an instant. Boom! A horrifying divine might descended with a loud bang, impacting Su Fong's body, Dao heart, and shaking his sore soul. Break for me! Su Fong's figure suddenly sank, and immediately after, he blasted out a punch. A simple and unadorned punch, but it contained a kind of wondrous heavenly Dao rhythm. When the punch blasted out, it erupted with a sound like the rumbling of a heavenly drum. Boom! The horrifying pressure released by the profound opening gate collapsed in an instant. Su Fong's figure flew up and actually flew out more than 10,000 feet in one breath. The height at this time was shockingly close to 90,000 feet. Whoosh! The many Western Xian cultivators in front of the profound opening gate were first stunned, and then they burst into a wave of shocked exclamations. Su Fang's punch had not only broken the pressure of the profound opening gate, but also the record of the profound opening gates test. The record that Sichuan Tianqing had just set was broken in less than half an hour. This is Su Fang. The #1 human prodigy of Jiuquan is so amazing. He surpassed. Su Fang has easily surpassed Sichuan Tianqing. 88,000 feet. This record, I'm afraid no one will be able to break it again. No one before and no one after. The #1 prodigy of Jiuquan. I have to admit defeat. At this time, the crowd had forgotten about Sichuan Tianqing's feelings, and they could not help but exclaim. Shock, awe, disbelief, and all kinds of emotions were focused on Sichuan Tianqing before, but now they were focused on Su Fang, and they were 10 times more shocked and awestruck than before. Sichuan Tianqing's body trembled, and the strong confidence that he had just built up began to waver. His heart was filled with bitterness. Who would have thought that all my hard work at today's amazing performance was for the sake of Su Fang's heaven-defying rise? Su Fang borrowed the power of Slayer's heart, and not his own strength. If he relied on himself, he would never be able to surpass me. Sichuan Tianqing continued to find excuses to comfort himself, and only then did he feel a little better. Su Fang's body began to fall, and he landed on the ground. Just when everyone thought that it was over, Su Fang suddenly flicked his finger above the profound opening gate. A small circle of light, the color of chaos, flew out from the tip of his finger, and as it rose up, it rapidly expanded and turned into a huge chaotic light wheel that rolled out. Hong Ming Heavenly Wheel. Boom, boom, boom. The profound opening gate released a power that was 10 times more terrifying than before, and it had already surpassed the Tao Profound Realm and even the Middle Tao Void Realm. It was comparable to the upper Tao Void Realm's pressure, and it blasted towards the Hong Ming Heavenly Wheel. After a series of collisions, the entire profound opening gate shook, and the material also fell into a violent tremor. Chi, chi, chi. The pillars on both sides of the profound opening gate lit up continuously. 9,000 feet, 9,300 feet, 9,700 feet. Chapter 3046. Under dazed gazes, the pillars on both sides of the profound opening gate completely lit up. Even the beams of the gate and the signboard of the gate released a dazzling xianguang. In an instant, the xianguang shone in all directions. It was not just the material and the surrounding space. What no one could see was that the entire Western Black Mountain suddenly flashed with a layer of light. BZZZ, BZZZ, BZZ. Everyone's heads were ringing. It was said that those who could reach 80,000 feet in the profound opening gate test had a chance of becoming a Tao Saint in the future. Those above 90,000 feet had a chance of becoming the Daozu. Su Fang had caused the profound opening gate to light up. What did this mean? Would his future achievements surpass the Daozu? How is this possible? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ethereal consciousnesses appeared in the sky above the profound opening gate. The peerless experts of the Western Black Mountain and the major factions of Western Black were alarmed by the commotion. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Cheating. Su Fang must have used some sort of cheating method. Perhaps Sichuan Tianqing's previous test was too shocking and caused the profound opening gates array to become chaotic. Absurd. How can the profound opening gate light up with a xianguang? This is clearly cheating. Everyone found it very difficult to accept this fact. So they found all kinds of reasons that they thought were reasonable and firmly believed in the reasons they made up. Cheating? The profound opening gate is damaged? Su Fang heard the discussion and sneered inside. Then he looked at Sichuan Tianqing. Sichuan Tianqing, didn't you want to step on Su Fang's head? I said before that you do not have a right. You did not have in the past, and you will not have it now. As for the future, you will never have the right. Sichuan Tianqing staggered, the confidence in his heart crumbling at this moment. Only now did he understand what it meant to fall the higher one climbed. He felt as if he had climbed high into the clouds, but he only stayed there for a moment before falling to the ground and shattering into pieces. Su Fang's cold gaze swept over Lung Qingwei, Lin Shuang, Shi Xianying, and the other Western black disciples. Lung Qingyue's body trembled as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Putting aside Su Fang's identity, just based on his strength and future potential, even Tianqing of the Western Mystery was not qualified to be his opponent, let alone her, Lung Qingyue. The Shixian disciples that had mocked and attacked Su Fang felt their hearts tremble. Qian Feng, find me when we reach the Sichuan mountain. Su Fang transmitted his thoughts to Qian Feng, who was at the back of the crowd. Then he took out the token that Shixian Daozu had given him. After activating it, it released a protective shun power. He calmly stepped into the depths of the Tongxian Gate and was swept up by a twisting shun power. His figure disappeared without a trace. Just like that, Su Fang announced his arrival in an incomparably domineering and overbearing manner. Arrogant. That Su Fang is really too arrogant. This is clearly looking down on our Shixian cultivators. It's just cheating. What's there to be arrogant about? Sooner or later, you'll be exposed. No matter how amazing his talent and strength are, he's at most a profound Dao cultivator. How many waves can he make in the Sichuan mountain? Long after Su Fang had left, the Shixian mountain geniuses finally spoke angrily. The other cultivators were silent and did not dare to interrupt. However, everyone knew that the Sichuan mountain would not be so peaceful in the coming days. The news of Su Fang's test at the Tongxian Gate quickly spread throughout the Western Mystery Divine Realm. The Sichuan Mountain and the other factions were all shaken. Su Fang's name also quickly spread throughout the Western Mystery Divine Realm. Almost every cultivator knew that the Shixian Daozu's direct disciple, the number one genius of the human race, Su Fang, had come to Shixian. After Su Fang stepped into the space behind the profound opening gate, he once again experienced weightlessness and shuttling through the array. By the time his body regained its weight, he had already appeared on a huge platform floating in the void outside the Western Mystery Mountain. He looked over. Strange peaks towered into the sky, shaking the heavens. At the center of the encirclement was a majestic main peak with a radius of no less than 10 million kilometers. On the main peak, pure, high-grade, and boundless spirit energy swirled in the form of clouds. Strange flowers and trees grew all over the mountain, and all kinds of rare birds and beasts roamed about. Pavilions and palaces flickered in and out of the clouds. This is the Sichuan Mountain? Su Fang was stunned by the grandeur of the Sichuan Mountain. Then, Su Fang made an astonishing discovery from the aura of the Sichuan Mountain. Not only did it have high-grade, pure spirit energy and the aura of the world, it also faintly contained primordial energy that Su Fang was familiar with. The Sichuan Mountain was not created by a divine ability. It was naturally formed from the depths of the primal chaos and was moved here by Master. It is not too strange that the Sichuan Mountain contains origin energy. Su Fang speculated, his heart filled with anticipation and excitement. The Sichuan Mountain contained naturally formed primordial energy. It was difficult for ordinary cultivators to absorb it, and it was even fatal. But for Su Fang, it was an excellent cultivation material. How could he not be happy? Just as he was thinking whoosh, whoosh, a series of thoughts suddenly flashed out of nothingness, transforming into a series of figures. The auras of these figures were all extraordinary. Almost all of them were formed by the thoughts of experts above the Dao Void realm. There was even a Dao saint among them. Su Fang's performance in the Tongxian Gate trial had shocked everyone. These Western Black Mountain experts couldn't wait to see what kind of person Su Fang was. An old man cupped his fists and bowed towards Su Fang. Disciple Ling Xiaozi pays his respects to Martial Uncle Su Fang. Su Fang was stunned. Martial Uncle? The old man said, this disciple's master is the wine saint. So he was the wine sage's disciple. However, he was a bit too old to call Su Fang Martial Uncle. This gave Su Fang a strange feeling. I am the master of the heaven-breaking peak, junior brother Su Fong. Are you interested in entering the heaven-breaking peak to cultivate? The Tao Saint expert nodded towards Su Fong. His tone was very friendly and even a bit polite. Su Fong pays his respects to senior brother Ian. Su Fong hurriedly cupped his fists towards the Tao Saint expert. Before entering the Tongxian Gate, Su Fong had learned a lot about the Western Black Mountain from Qianfeng. There were a total of 9 Tao Saints on the Western Black Mountain. Some were disciples of the Western Black Daozu, while others had joined the Western Black Mountain later. Of the 9 Tao Saints, other than the sovereign and the 3 grand elders who lived on the main peak, the other Tao Saints chose other peaks with abundant spirit energy as their training grounds. The Tao Saint expert in front of him was the master of the heaven-breaking peak. His name was Yin Patian, and he was one of the 9 Tao Saints. He was also the disciple of the Western Black Daozu. Ling Xiaozi said, before Master went to the Southern Black Mountain battlefield, he repeatedly told this disciple that when Martial Uncle Su Fong arrives at the Western Black Mountain, I must let him enter the Wine Saint Peak. Martial Uncle Ian, please don't make things difficult for this disciple. Fine, senior brother Drunkard has taken the lead again. Su Fong, come to senior brother's heaven-breaking peak when you have time. Yin Patian could only give up. As he nodded at Su Fong, his figure quickly disappeared. The other experts of the Western Black Mountain all came forward and chatted with Su Fong. They were all very friendly. These experts of the Western Black Mountain were all powerful elders of the Western Black Mountain. Not only were their strength extraordinary, but they also held great power. They were so polite to Su Fong not only because Su Fong was the disciple of the Daozu, but also because of Su Fong's shocking performance in the Tongxian Gate test. They could see that Su Fong would definitely be a peerless figure in the future, so they were trying to be friendly with Su Fong. Suddenly, a majestic voice suddenly rang out from the platform. What are you doing? Each and every one of you? Su Fong, quickly come to the main peak's main hall. Lord Sovereign, Ling Xiaozi and the others all revealed expressions of reverence. They all cupped their fists towards Su Fong, then turned into divine light and disappeared without a trace. The owner of that voice should be the Lord Sovereign of the Western Black Mountain. From his tone, he doesn't seem very happy. Su Fong guessed in his heart. He then flew off the platform and slowly flew towards the main peak. He landed on the main peak's plaza. Arriving in front of the majestic and solemn black main hall, a middle-aged man walked out from the palace. His cold eyes swept over Su Fong, and he said imposingly, "You are Su Fong? Stay here and wait for the sovereign to summon you." Su Fong's brows furrowed. He could only obediently wait at the steps of the palace's main entrance. Su Fong had a bad feeling in his heart. The sovereign of the Western Black Mountain was his senior brother, and this was his first time coming to the Western Black Mountain. Logically speaking, the sovereign should have directly summoned him and not left him hanging here. It seems that this senior brother sovereign is very narrow-minded. Su Fong thought to himself, who knew he actually waited for more than 10 days, but the sovereign still didn't summon him. When I entered the profound gate, I gave everyone a show of strength, but the sovereign immediately returned the favor. He's planning to give me a show of strength. Su Fong sneered in his heart and stood there imposingly. The Western Black Mountain bigwigs, elders, and disciples who had been paying attention to Su Fong knew that Su Fong had been given the cold shoulder by the sovereign. They immediately understood that Su Fong had previously injured Lung Qingwei and defeated Tian Qing of the Western Black Mountain. He had offended the sovereign and was thus punished by the sovereign. On a mountain outside the main peak, in a cave abode, Myriad Thunder, true monarch, was relieved when he received news from his disciples. Su Fong. Su Fong, this venerable one has already said that the more arrogant you are, the shorter your life will be. Do you think the Western Black Mountain is a place where you can act wantonly and arrogantly? Now do you know how powerful I am? After offending the sovereign, even if you are Daozu's disciple and have heaven-defying talent, you still have to obediently bow your head. Humph! Those thieves from the heavenly coffin are too useless. They actually allowed him to enter the Western Black Mountain, but it doesn't matter. Even if this venerable one doesn't do anything, Su Fong won't have an easy time in the Western Black Mountain. Sooner or later, he will seize the opportunity to kill him and avenge this venerable one's humiliation. Myriad Thunder, true monarch, sneered again and again, his eyes flashing with fierce killing intent. While Su Fong was being given the cold shoulder by the sovereign and was waiting to be summoned in front of the main hall, news spread that Tian Qing of the Western Black Mountain had been conferred the title of Elder. He had chosen a mountain peak to open a Taoist field and had resumed his original surname, changing his name to Chun Tianqing. Because Lung Qingwei had offended Daozu, she was punished by being grounded in a cave abode for 10,000 years to reflect on her mistakes. This kind of punishment was neither painful nor itchy. Su Fong waited outside the main hall for 3 whole months. The middle-aged man from before walked out of the hall and said majestically, "His Excellency the Sovereign is in closed-door cultivation and can't come out to see you. However, he has issued a decree to confer you the title of Elder of the Western Black Mountain's strange, solitary peak. This is your token and elder robe. You may go." Strange, solitary peak? Chapter 3047. When the cultivators of Western Mystery Mountain reached Dao, profound realm, they could be promoted to Elder. However, according to the strength of the Elder, the amount of authority was also different. Some powerful Dao Su realm elders could become a peak master. Some newly promoted Daoxian elders were usually low-level elders in some mountain peaks, which was to say, their status was slightly higher than the disciples. They were even inferior to those special disciples. Su Fong was conferred the title of Strange Silence Peak Elder. Naturally, he was not an ordinary elder, but a peak master. He looked to be on the same level as those powerful elders. However, Su Fong would not believe that the sovereign made him wait for 3 months and intentionally neglected him. Now, he was uncharacteristically giving him such a high status and authority. Su Fong put away the token and robe. Then, he left the palace and flew out of the plaza at the top of the main peak. Arriving in the air, Su Fong used the Elder token to sense Strange Silence Peak. At this time, that martial nephew Ling Xiao flew over. After cupping his fists and bowing to Su Fong, he asked, "Martial Uncle Su Fong, how will the sovereign arrange for you?" Martial Uncle is Daozu's disciple, and when you enter Tongxian Gate, you shock the world. I believe that the sovereign will give Martial Uncle an extremely high treatment. Although this disciple of the wine saint was very mediocre and his age was not young, he was very enthusiastic and always cared about Su Fong. Su Fong said, "The sovereign conferred me the title of Strange Silence Peak Master. I was just about to find someone to ask, where is Strange Silence Peak?" Strange Silence Peak. Ling Zhao's divine light changed slightly. Then, with a bitter smile on his face, he changed to spiritual sense transmission. "Martial Uncle, the sovereign is intentionally making things difficult for you." Su Fong raised his eyebrows. Could it be that there is something wrong with that Strange Silence Peak? It is more than just inappropriate. It is greatly inappropriate. Ling Xiao responded with a bitter smile. Then, he introduced Strange Silence Peak to Su Fong. As it turned out, Strange Silence Peak was the most desolate peak among the many peaks of Western Mystery. If it was just a desolate location, it was nothing. After all, it was a peak. In Western Mystery Mountain, many Dao Void experts were not qualified to manage a peak. However, the Strange Silence Peak was indeed a little special. In the past, Strangely Silent Peak was a mountain with a decent amount of spirit chi. There were also training grounds and disciples on it. However, more than 10 million years ago, the spirit chi of Oddly Silent Peak suddenly began to dry up. Not only did the mountain lose its spiritual energy, but it also became a desolate place. Not only did his cultivation fail to improve, but it also continued to drop. Who would cultivate in such a place? As a result, the previous peak masters and disciples of Strange Silence Peak all left, and the entire mountain peak became empty. Su Fong was conferred the title of Strange Solitary Peak Master. This was clearly an exile. Senior Brother Sovereign really thinks highly of me, Su Fong. Su Fong sneered as his eyes seemed to be frozen. Ling Xiaozi said, "Martial Uncle Su Fong, why don't we wait for Master to come back and beg the sovereign to give Martial Uncle another place, or to the training grounds of the Wine Saint Peak?" Su Fong shook his head and said, "Since the sovereign wants to suppress me, how could he agree to let me live in another place? At that time, he will be able to use his weakness to suppress me, and even senior brother Wine Sage will be implicated." Just as the two were talking, a divine light flashed and quickly condensed into Een Potion's figure. Senior brother Sovereign's arrangement is a bit too much. Is he not afraid of Daozu returning and being punished by Daozu's master? This seat will go and reason with senior brother Sovereign. When Een Patian heard that Su Fong was arranged to live on Strange Silence Peak, he was instantly enraged. With a flash of divine light, his figure disappeared without a trace. Who would have thought that Een Patian was also an impatient person? In less than one incense stick's time, Een Potion's thought appeared again, and he said resentfully to Su Fong, "Su Fong, you live on Strange Silence Peak and wait for Master to come back. Let's see how he will deal with this." When Een Patian went to see the sovereign, he was obviously rebuffed and looked angry from embarrassment. No matter, senior brother Sovereign's arrangement may have other intentions. Living on Strange Silence Peak is nothing. I, Su Fong, was born ordinary. What kind of bad environment have I not been in? A cultivator should continue to rise in adversity. A mere Strange Silence Peak is not a problem for me, Su Fong. Su Fong said domineeringly. "Not bad. You have such a temperament. No wonder Master values you so much. If you have any difficulties in the future, just come and find senior brother." Een Patian nodded to Su Fong and then turned into a divine light and disappeared into nothingness. After asking for the location of Strange Silence Peak, Su Fong asked Ling Xiaozi, "Where is Little Lonely Peak?" It turned out that Su Fong planned to go to Little Lonely Peak to find Qianfeng. With Lung Qingyue's domineering nature, she definitely would not let Qianfeng go. Although Su Fong had only met Qianfeng once, he would not ignore Qianfeng's life and death. If Qianfeng was implicated because of him, it would be as easy as lifting a finger for him. Martial Uncle wants to go to Little Lonely Peak. Ling Xiaozi took out a jade slip that contained a map of the surrounding peaks of the Western Mystery Mountain. The highest level of the peaks of the Western Mystery Mountain was naturally the main peak, followed by the peaks owned by other Dao Saints. Strange Silence Peak was second and belonged to the middle level, while Little Lonely Peak belonged to the lowest level. Su Fong identified the direction, bid farewell to Ling Xiaozi, and flew towards Little Lonely Peak. When he arrived at the outskirts of the Western Mystery Mountain, Su Fong stopped in the air above a lonely peak that was 100 zhang tall. Immediately, a thought flashed out from the barrier outside the peak and transformed into the figure of a middle-aged man. "What is the matter? I am a master of Strange Silence Peak. I have specially come to pay my respects to the master of Little Lonely Peak." Su Fong spoke and flashed his elder token. "Master of Strange Silence Peak? Since when did Strange Silence Peak have a master?" The middle-aged man that was transformed from the thought was very surprised. However, he did not dare to be negligent and cupped his fists towards Su Fong. "Master Peak, please wait a moment. Allow me to report to the peak." The thought flashed past. Su Fong waited for the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, but there was no more movement from Little Lonely Peak. He could not help but feel furious. It was very obvious that the master of Little Lonely Peak already knew Su Fong's identity and looked down on Su Fong. Or perhaps he was afraid that receiving Su Fong would cause trouble, so he directly avoided meeting him. What a snob. Su Fong used his great perfection ability to sense Qianfeng's aura. With Su Fong's current strength, it was easy for him to find a mere outer disciple of Little Lonely Peak. Soon he sensed Qianfeng. Looking through the enchantment, Su Fong was first startled by the scene he saw, and then a raging fire ignited in his eyes. Immediately, his figure flashed, and he flashed towards Little Lonely Peak. Who knew, touching the enchantment outside, Su Fong was directly knocked back. "A mere enchantment wants to stop me, Su Fong?" Su Fong let out a sneer, and urged the sky-piercing blood king vine. His whole body completely transformed into a blood vine, and with a whoosh he drilled into the enchantment, penetrated the enchantment, and then wriggled in. As soon as Su Fang's figure appeared, he immediately turned into his human form and flew towards where Qianfeng was. Qianfeng was originally an outer disciple of Little Lonely Peak. His talent and strength were extremely extraordinary among the many outer disciples, and it was very likely that he would become an inner disciple. Therefore, his life was quite good. However, after returning from this trip, Qianfeng's life had undergone an earth-shaking change. First, he was directly demoted from an outer disciple to a servant disciple, just like a slave. Now, what he did every day was to serve Little Lonely Peak's divine beast. Not only was he dirty and tired, but he was also humiliated and tortured by Little Lonely Peak's disciples every day. Even the spiritual item that he had painstakingly found to treat his father's injury when he went out of Sichuan Mountain was snatched away by a core disciple of Little Lonely Peak. At this moment, Qianfeng was enduring extraordinary shame and humiliation. He was thrown into a cesspool of divine beast feces by a group of inner disciples. Not only was the divine beast feces smelly, but it was also extremely corrosive. It corroded his skin until it festered, and the stench almost suffocated him. More than a dozen Little Lonely Peak's inner disciples were laughing wantonly. Every time Qianfeng struggled to climb out of the cesspool, he was immediately knocked back into the cesspool by those disciples. After more than a dozen times, Qianfeng's consciousness was blurred. His body was buried in the cesspool, and only his head was exposed. A handsome and extraordinary disciple sneered and said, "A mere outer sect disciple actually has the guts to splash the heavens, even daring to mock young Master Tianqing, and even daring to mix together with Su Fang, courting death." Qianfeng said angrily, "Su Fang is the #1 genius of the human race, Daozu's disciple. I only spoke a few words with him, and we don't have a deep relationship. What's more, even if I want to be friends with such a character, I don't have the qualifications. He surpassed Sichuan Tianqing in the Tongxian Gates test. This is a fact for all to see. I only spoke a few words, and you actually humiliated me like this." That handsome disciple sneered, "Of all things you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have been together with Su Fang." "Humph! What human race's #1 genius, Dao Ancestor's disciple? You offended young Master Tianqing and offended Lord Sovereign. In the Western Mystery Mountains, even if he is a divine dragon, he will still have to obediently turn into a snake." Qianfeng had already been tortured to the point that his will collapsed. He let out a broken voice, "Kill me. I beg you to kill me," the handsome disciple sneered. "Kill you? Offending young Master Tianqing and young Miss Lung Qingwei. I will let you know what is called begging for death. Killing people is just a matter of nodding your head. You're going too far. This is just the beginning. Eat a mouthful of feces, and this Lord will spare you this time. Maybe this Lord will be happy and give you the spiritual item to treat your father's injury." "Father, I will eat." Qianfeng suddenly sobered up. He hesitated for a moment, picked up the feces, and opened his mouth to swallow the feces. The dozen or so disciples burst into laughter. Suddenly, a divine aura suddenly descended, wrapped around Qianfeng, and directly pulled him out of the cesspool. "Who is it? You don't want to live anymore." The handsome disciple let out a cold shout. Su Fang's figure stepped out of the void. A powerful will swept out, and the disciples of Little Lone Peak were forced to kneel on the ground. Su Fangda's people." Qianfeng recognized Su Fang and looked at Su Fang in disbelief. A warm current surged up in an instant, and hot tears flowed out. Su Fang used a water element divine aura, condensing a water column to attack Qianfeng's body, washing away the divine beast feces on his body. Then he used a profound yang qi, causing him to once again radiate a majestic life force. The injuries on his body quickly began to recover. Su Fang, he is Su Fang. Chapter 3048. Whoosh, an old man broke through the air and shouted at Su Fong with a gloomy face. Elder Su Fong, you barged into my little lonely peak and shackled my disciples. What is the meaning of this? It was the little lonely peak master, an expert of the lower Tao void realm. Su Fong's cold eyes swept over the little lonely peak master. The old man's body instantly froze as he began to tremble uncontrollably. Even if I am a divine dragon, I still have to obediently turn into a snake? Haha, you look down on me. If I don't punish you slightly, you will think that I am a soft persimmon that can be bullied by mere disciples. Su Fong looked at the dozen or so disciples and smiled sinisterly. With a thought, the dozen or so disciples were shackled by his powerful willpower and were swept into the cesspool together. Those disciples were shackled and couldn't move at all. They were also unable to use any defense. After being thrown into the cesspool, they could only sink to the bottom of the cesspool in despair. Soon, they were nowhere to be seen. Although it wasn't fatal, it was enough to make them suffer. The little lonely peak master was instantly enraged. When he was about to intervene, Su Fong said with a murderous look, "You should know what kind of crime it is to humiliate the disciples of the Daozu, right? If you protect them, you will be guilty as well. I will throw you into the cesspool, just like them." The little lonely peak master was so scared that he didn't dare to intervene. If he was really thrown into the cesspool by Su Fong, how could he still have the face to stay in the Western Mystery Mountain? Su Fong asked Qian Feng in a deep voice, "Who stole the spiritual item that you used to treat my father's injuries?" Qian Feng hurriedly said, "It was that leading core disciple. He is so cruel to his fellow disciples and devoid of humanity. How can such a deranged person be worthy of being a disciple of the Western Mystery Mountain?" Su Fong said majestically, his voice filled with supreme majesty. He waved his hand and grabbed in the air. That handsome disciple flew out from the cesspool and rolled onto the shore. Immediately after, Su Fong waved his sleeve and released a divine aura, shattering the disciple's Tao palace. It was equivalent to completely destroying his cultivation. The little lonely peak master was furious. "Su Fong, although you are an elder, you have no right to casually punish my little lonely peak's core disciple. I will definitely report this matter to the punishment hall. Since you don't teach your disciples well, I will teach you a lesson. If you don't accept it, you can go to the punishment hall. If you go to my senior martial brother Sovereign, that would be even better." Su Fong smiled indifferently, unleashing his godly might to bring Qian Feng away. After leaving Little Lonely Peak, Su Fong asked Qian Feng, "Are you willing to follow me to Strange Silence Peak?" Disciple. But Disciple's family. Qian Feng was now at the end of his rope. It wasn't easy for him to meet a savior. How could he be unwilling to let go? The only thing he couldn't let go of was his family. It doesn't matter. You can just bring your family to live in Strange Silence Peak. Strange Silence Peak is so big. Don't tell me your family can't live there? Su Fong asked where Qian Feng's family lived and took Qian Feng to a city on the outskirts of Shixian Mountain to take his family away. At the same time, he gave Qian Feng Dan medicine to heal his father. The little lonely peak master angrily went to the punishment hall to complain, but was reprimanded by the punishment hall elder. He finally understood. No matter how disliked Su Fong was by the sovereign, he was Daozu's direct disciple, the sovereign's shitty, and the #1 genius of the human race. He had just shaken Shixian by passing the Tongxian gate test. No matter if it was status or power, he was not someone an elder like him could shake. There was no way around it. He could only accept his bad luck. What the little lonely peak master did not realize was that Su Fong had only destroyed the cultivation of a disciple. It was already merciful. Su Fong followed the map and came to the southernmost border of Shixian Mountain, to his lonely peak. It was just as Ling Xiao had said. The lonely peak was more than 100 li in radius and more than 10,000 zhang tall. It was a medium-sized peak among the many peaks of Shixian Mountain. Yet the lonely peak was completely barren, without a single blade of grass. It was desolate and deathly still. The formations had also been lost, but the palaces and dojos of the past were mostly intact. This kind of place was not suitable for cultivators to live in for long periods of time. It would not increase their power and would cause their cultivation to drop. But this was not a problem for Su Fong. There is no Ling energy. Can I take it? Su Fong looked at the lonely peak and gave a domineering smile. Then he released his primordial spirit body and also released the formation master, Master Zhua. He started to create formations on the lonely peak. His main body went to the former residence of the peak master. After cleaning up, he temporarily settled down. After 3 years, the primordial spirit body and Master Zhua finally created a vast formation on the lonely peak. It was not a defensive formation, but a formation that covered all of the lonely peak and used to gather Ling energy. It was also not a spirit-gathering formation that cultivators usually use to gather Ling energy, but a spirit-binding formation. This kind of spirit-binding formation was extremely domineering. Once it was activated, it would forcefully plunder the Ling energy of heaven and earth and the world's aura. Next, Su Fong took out the world fragment from the heavenly Tao Dharma body and inserted it into the mountain as the core of the spirit-binding formation. Rumble. The giant spirit formation was activated by Su Fong. The formation's power suddenly erupted and spread out to the surrounding void. In the surrounding void, as well as the dozens of mountain peaks near the lonely peak, the Ling energy and world's aura slowly flowed towards the lonely peak under the attraction of the formation's power. The Ling energy and world's aura gathered at the lonely peak and seeped into the mountain peak. The entire mountain peak was like a dry land that had been moistened by rain and dew. In an instant, it no longer looked so desolate and deathly still. Although the Ling energy was still very thin, it was already habitable for cultivation. And with the continuous operation of the spirit-binding formation, large amounts of Ling energy and world's aura merged into the lonely peak. Very soon, the lonely peak would become majestic. By then, even if the lonely peak was not some holy land for cultivation, it would definitely not be inferior to other mid-sized mountain peaks. In some of the dojos and caves on the lonely peak, Su Fong also created formations that were specially used to gather Ling energy and world's aura. Su Fong released by Ling, Qing Yu, Xiao Wanting, and the rest from the heavenly Tao Dharma body and entered the dojos to cultivate. Qian Feng and his family were also arranged by Su Fong to stay in the dojos. Goddess Luo was arranged by Su Fong to cultivate in Fu Yao's cave. Shixian Daozu originally promised to help Goddess Luo find a master to solve her problem. But because of the invasion of the human world, this matter was delayed. Strange Silence Peak, which was originally very cold and cheerless, suddenly became lively. The primordial spirit Dharma body and master is what continued to create defensive formations around the lonely peak. Su Fong's original body cultivated in the cave. Who knew that in less than 5 years, an earth-shattering roar came from outside the lonely peak. Su Fong, get out here. Looks like the cultivators of the Xixian mountain are not so friendly to me. Su Fong smiled coldly. He flew out of the cave and passed through the enchantment. In the air above the lonely peak, more than 100 cultivators stood in the air. They were all elders and higher-ups from the surrounding mountain peaks. The leader was a burly man. His beard was like steel needles. He was mighty and domineering. His cultivation was also extremely shocking. He had reached the middle realm of Tao Void Realm. Among the elders of the mid-sized mountain peaks, he was considered a powerful figure. I have just moved into the lonely peak and have not had the time to visit my neighbors. I did not expect everyone to be so polite. I am deeply honored that so many people have come to visit me. I hope you can forgive me for not receiving you well. Su Fong smiled and cupped his fists at the many cultivators. The burly man shouted angrily, Su Fong, don't play dumb. We are not here to visit you. You don't have that much face. We are here to ask you why you want to rob our spiritual chi. Not here to visit me. Su Fong's face was full of astonishment, and then he said innocently, when did I plunder your spiritual energy? The Xixian mountain is so big and has so much spiritual chi. When did it become yours? The burly man said angrily, You use the formation to gather spiritual chi, causing the spiritual chi of our mountain peaks to wantonly flow away. How dare you quibble? Su Fong said helplessly. You have also seen that my lonely peak does not have a trace of spiritual chi, and you have so much spiritual chi that you can't use it all up. We are all from the same sect. Why are you so stingy when I want to borrow some? The many cultivators were fuming with anger. They shouted angrily, and some even began to curse. Su Fong's face suddenly became gloomy. He said in a cold and embarrassed voice, I am the direct disciple of the Tao Master. Do you know the consequences of insulting me? The many cultivators who were denouncing him suddenly felt their hearts tremble. I was arranged here by Senior Marshal Brother Sovereign. Naturally, I have obtained Senior Marshal Brother Sovereign's permission to do this. If you have the ability, then go find Senior Marshal Brother Sovereign. If there is nothing else, please go back. I won't see you out. Su Fong showed his strong and domineering side. After he finished speaking, he returned to Lonely Peak without looking back. The peak masters and elders of the surrounding dozen or so mountains looked at each other. After a final discussion, they went straight to the punishment hall. Su Fong hadn't even warmed up his seat in the cave when a punishment hall elder arrived above Lonely Peak with anger and majesty. Su Fong, I order you to quickly remove the formation. Otherwise, do not blame me for punishing you with the law. The punishment hall elder did not say another word and had Su Fong remove the formation. Su Fong sneered and said, I wonder which law you're going to use to punish me. The punishment hall elder was speechless. He really couldn't think of a law that could punish Su Fong. The punishment hall elder's humiliation turned to anger. He shouted domineeringly, I represent Punishment Hall and order you to remove the formation. You dare to defy the authority of Punishment Hall? A mere Punishment Hall elder dares to be so arrogant. Su Fong sneered and waved his hand to take out a token. The token floated in the air and released the supreme presence of Shi Xian's Daozu. Under the pressure of Shi Xian's Daozu, the Punishment Hall elder trembled as he knelt down. Even though he was extremely humiliated and angry, he did not dare to say an extra word. I am Daozu's direct disciple. Who do you think you are to be so arrogant in front of me? Could it be that the Punishment Hall was above the Tao ancestor? Or do you dare to look down on Daozu? Su Fong sneered and put away the token. Chapter 3049. What a joke. Didn't you come here aggressively because you were relying on the power of the Punishment Hall? Can't I rely on Master's power? Besides, Lung Qingyue can bully others with her power, and Tianqing can bully others with his power. Why can't my Daozu disciple, Su Fong, bully others with his power? Today, I'll bully others with my power. Scram! From now on, no one from the Punishment Hall is allowed to set foot on Strange Silence Peak. Su Fong was overbearing. In the end, he let out a furious roar, and a fierce and terrifying willpower exploded out, causing the Punishment Hall elder's Tao heart to tremble, and he retreated repeatedly. Just you wait. The Punishment Hall elder was shocked and angry, but he didn't dare to attack Su Fong. He could only leave resentfully. From then on, Strange Silence Peak became quiet, and no one came to disturb them anymore. At the same time, Su Fong's bad reputation for bullying others quickly spread throughout the Western Mystery Mountain, tyrannically plundering the spirit chi of other dojos and not even putting the Punishment Hall in his eyes. Su Fong is too arrogant. He's just relying on the Daozu to support him. Under the deliberate propaganda of some people with ulterior motives, Su Fong became synonymous with arrogant, despotic, and bullying others. No matter what the outside world said, Su Fong turned a deaf ear to it and calmly cultivated in his cave abode. Who knew, not long after, something unexpected happened again. The spirit chi and world aura gathered from the surrounding mountains by the spirit binding array began to disappear at an astonishing speed. At first, it was very slow, but later, more than half of the spirit chi gathered by the spirit binding array disappeared without a trace, leaving only a small portion. Strange, this Strange Silence Peak is indeed strange. Su Fong was very surprised and began to search for the reason. He activated the world fragment and permeated the power of the world into the mountain. Soon, he sensed that the spirit chi and world aura from the surrounding mountains all flowed into the mountain after permeating it. It felt like there was a bottomless pit inside the mountain that swallowed as much spirit chi as there was. I want to see what it is that can actually devour my spiritual energy. Su Fong activated his mysterious yellow avatar and unleashed his earth element divine might, heading towards the interior of the strange silence peak. In the depths of the mountain, Su Fong finally found the source of the loss of spiritual energy. It was a cave that was less than 10 feet in size. All the spiritual chi and world aura flowed into the cave and disappeared without a trace. Su Fong released her sensing ability. Xiao Chan was horrified to discover an extremely weak aura of life and primordial energy in the cave. What monster is that? Su Fong was surprised and shocked. Deploying his defenses, he entered Dongxian carefully. The interior of the cave was illuminated by a faint chaotic xianguang. Su Fong took a closer look and was shocked. It turned out that there was a cocoon floating in the middle of the cave. The spirit chi and world aura that rolled in from the outside were all devoured by the cocoon. How dare you steal my spiritual energy? Su Fong flew into a rage and shot out a beam of sword chi. Puff! As the sword chi landed on the cocoon trembled slightly and primordial energy gushed out from it, easily dissolving the sword chi. What kind of monster is that? How can it possess primordial energy? Su Fong's heart thumped. Primordial energy was the highest origin of all energy and matter. All energy, matter, and even life in the chaos originated from primordial energy. Only cultivators who cultivated the supreme, heavenly Tao could master a very small amount of primordial energy. He did not know what kind of monster was hidden in the strange cocoon, but it actually contained primordial energy. How could Su Fong not be shocked? TSK, TSK, TSK. Su Fong unleashed another beam of sword chi that landed on the cocoon. The primordial energy gushing out of the cocoon easily disintegrated Su Fong's attacks. The cocoon did not retaliate after the continuous attacks, allowing Su Fong to relax. He immediately activated his blood fiend Dharma body and punched out. The heavenly Tao's sound rumbled towards the cocoon. What Su Fong did not expect was that when the heavenly Tao's sound bombarded the cocoon, a trembling sound suddenly sounded from inside the cocoon. Immediately after, a strand of chaos-colored silk shot out from the cocoon. Su Fong was caught off guard and was immediately bound by the silk, unable to move at all. The silk was extremely strange and tough. No matter how Su Fong activated his power, he could not move it at all. Even when Su Fong activated Ghost Poison, he could not corrode it at all. Fortunately, after the cocoon released that strand of silk, it did not attack Su Fong again. However, it was still wantonly devouring the spirit chi and world aura that rolled over. Perhaps only primordial energy can wear down this silk. Su Fong could not break free from the silk shackles and had no choice but to activate his primordial energy. Unexpectedly, what Su Fong did not expect was that as soon as the primordial energy touched the silk, it immediately penetrated it. It was like the relationship between ice and water. The silk quickly began to melt in the primordial energy, turning into an extremely pure primordial energy and fusing with Su Fong's primordial energy. The silk that the monster in the cocoon spits out is actually a substance condensed from primordial energy. Su Fong was extremely shocked and then fell into ecstasy. The culprit that devoured the spirit chi of Strange Silence Peak was actually a strange treasure that could continuously devour spirit chi and world aura and spit out silk condensed from primordial energy. If he could continuously provide that kind of silk, wouldn't he be able to obtain more primordial energy in the future? It was extremely difficult for Su Fong to cultivate primordial energy. Until now, how much primordial energy had he cultivated? Now that he unexpectedly had a way to obtain primordial energy, how could he not be surprised? Although he was pleasantly surprised, Su Fong was also puzzled. It's obvious that the reason Strange Silence Peak became so desolate is because of this cocoon. But the strange thing is, why didn't anyone discover such a strange treasure? Strange Silence Peak became a wasteland. Why didn't the upper echelons of the Western Mystery Mountain investigate? Although this cocoon is hidden very deeply, with the strength of the Western Mystery Giants, it shouldn't be difficult to discover. He could not figure it out. Su Fong could not figure out. No matter what, this is a supreme fortune that belongs to my Su Fong. Since he cannot figure it out, Su Fong simply stopped thinking about it. Next, Su Fong continued to experiment, attacking the cocoon, and gradually figured out a pattern. That cocoon could only spit silk, but had no other offensive abilities, nor could it move. And after spitting it out 3 times, no matter how Su Fong attacked, there was no more silk to be spat out. Su Fong estimated that the cocoon needed to continuously devour spirit chi and world aura before it could spit out silk again. As for how long it would take, it was impossible to determine. After thinking for a while, Su Fong had an idea. He first created a formation in the cave, then crushed several life-shrinking technique runes, fusing their power into the formation, completely concealing the aura of the cocoon. Then he stripped his essence blood and seeped it into the cocoon. Inside the cocoon, there was definitely an extremely terrifying life form that would not be weaker than the heaven-piercing Blood King vine, or even at the same height as the spider. Su Fong planned to seep his essence blood into the cocoon before the powerful life form was born, fusing with it and controlling its consciousness. In this way, even if a powerful monster was born from the cocoon, it would not be able to escape Su Fong's control. Little did he know, as soon as the essence blood touched the cocoon, a wave of primordial chi gushed out from the cocoon, incinerating the essence blood into ashes. That cocoon was clearly only interested in spirit chi and world aura, and was extremely repulsed by life essence blood. This caused Su Fong's wishful thinking to fail. Su Fong pondered for a long time. Whoosh! Su Fong activated the heaven-piercing Blood King vine and fused it with the primordial chi at the same time. The blood vines wriggled out and entangled the cocoon. Strands of blood that contained the primordial chi and Su Fong's consciousness slowly seeped into the cocoon. This time, he finally succeeded. The blood strands of the cocoon were sucked in together with the primordial chi and did not reject it. Su Fong did not let his consciousness take over the cocoon for the time being. Instead, he hid inside and slowly influenced it. After a period of time, he would slowly fuse with the consciousness of the life form inside. After doing all this, Su Fong left the cave and returned to the cave abode. The spirit chi plundered from the Strange Silence Peak was barely enough for many cultivators to use for cultivation. Su Fong also took out pills and resources for them to cultivate. For the sake of the cocoon in the cave, he could only consume a large amount of resources. Fortunately, Su Fong was now a tycoon and could completely support the cultivation of the cultivators under his command. Following that, Su Fong settled down in the cave abode and focused his energy to cultivate. The main cultivation method was still the Jiuquan Limitless Sutra. The other cultivation methods and divine abilities were supplementary. The primordial chi transformed from those silk strands were slowly fused and digested by Su Fong, making the primordial chi in Su Fong's Tao Palace increase by quite a bit. At the same time, Su Fong also swallowed king-grade medicinal pills and continuously raised his cultivation, striving to assault peak Tao Profound as soon as possible and step into a higher realm. The Icebone Jade Marrow and Ice Heart Flower that he obtained from the Ice Soul Holy Clan, Su Fong could only fuse with the Icebone Jade Marrow bit by bit now. With his 7 Luster Vajra Tao Heart, he could only fuse 1 drop at a time. Otherwise, it would forcefully freeze his Tao Heart to death. Only after completely fusing with the Icebone Jade Marrow would he dare to continue fusing with the Ice Heart Flower. This process was very long and absolutely could not succeed in a short time. But Su Fong had plenty of patience. How could it be that easy to want to cultivate an immortal Tao heart? Every once in a while, Su Fong would enter the acupoints inside Strange Solitude Peak's cave and continuously probe and ponder. At the same time, he would also continuously send the heaven-piercing Blood King, Vine's blood threads, and primordial chi, along with his consciousness, into the inside of the silkworm cocoon. In the end, Su Fong gradually concluded the pattern. That silkworm cocoon could only spit out silk once every 1,000 years or so. Furthermore, there were at most only 3 strands of silk each time. This method of obtaining primordial chi looked very slow, but in reality, it was incomparably astonishing. Compared to Su Fong cultivating the Joshuan Limitless Sutra to obtain primordial chi, the speed was 100 times, 1,000 times faster. Time flew by. Unknowingly, Su Fong had already stayed in Strange Solitude Peak for over 50,000 years. Under the accumulation of king-grade medicinal pills and primordial chi, Su Fong's cultivation rapidly rose from the normal state of Upper Dao Profound realm to the peak state of Dao Profound in a mere 50,000 years. Chapter 30:50. Strange Silence Peak has been so quiet all these years. Has Su Fong actually become well-behaved? Su Fong really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even Lord Sovereign is suppressing him. What can he do? So what if he's a Daozu disciple? In a Western Profound Mountain, even Daozu disciples have to obey Lord Sovereign's will. Can Su Fong really be restless? Lord Sovereign can tolerate him once or twice, but he definitely won't tolerate him a 3rd time. Once he angers Lord Sovereign, Su Fong definitely won't have a good time. Many people who paid attention to Su Fong were surprised to see that Su Fong didn't show up again and didn't cause any trouble. They discussed spiritedly, thinking that Su Fong had been suppressed by the sovereign and had gone silent. Another 10,000 years passed. Everyone's attention shifted to a major event that was about to happen in the Western Profound Divine Domain, and no one paid attention to Su Fong anymore. Myriad Thunder, true monarch, who had been rather worried about Su Fong's revenge, finally felt completely at ease. On this day, Ling Xiaozi came to Strange Silence Peak. Martial Uncle Su Fong, disciple Ling Xiaozi greets you. Ling Xiaozi transmitted his voice into Strange Silence Peak. Su Fong's thought flashed out and turned into a figure in front of Ling Xiaozi. Ling Xiaozi, what's the matter? Ling Xiaozi said respectfully. Master sent a message from the Southern Profound Battlefield, asking about Martial Uncle's recent situation, so Disciple has come to greet Martial Uncle. Ling Xiaozi's master was the Wine Saint. Who would have thought that he would still care about Su Fong in the Southern Profound Divine Domain? Su Fong was quite moved. Su Fong asked, what's the situation in the Southern Profound Divine Domain? Ling Xiaozi's expression sank, and he sighed. The situation isn't good. As it turned out, the foreign races had invaded the Southern Profound Divine Domain on a large scale. Countless human experts had rushed to the Southern Profound Divine Domain, and the demon race had fled to the human world to resist the foreign races. After paying a heavy price, the human race and demon race had finally resisted the foreign race's attack. However, the situation was clearly unfavorable to the human world. This was just the beginning. The human race had already mobilized countless experts. Most of the Daozu had personally rushed to the southern mysterious continent. Only then did they manage to stabilize the situation. If this stalemate continued, the human world would very likely have to give up on the Southern Profound Divine region once the foreign races launched another all-out attack. Losing the Southern Profound Divine realm meant that a corner of the human world had been torn apart by the foreign races. The human race was in a very bad situation. Right now, the Western Profound Divine region is no longer peaceful. Bandits are running rampant, and some evil forces are taking advantage of the situation to rise up. There are also foreign races infiltrating the Western Profound Divine region. Even the evil god, who had disappeared long ago, has appeared in the Western Profound Divine region. Ling Xiaozi then told Su Fong about the current situation in the Western Profound Divine realm. Following the invasion of the foreign races, the Western Profound Divine region started to become unstable. In order to stabilize the Western Profound Divine realm, The sovereign had personally ordered the disciples and elders of the Western Profound Mountain to be sent out on missions to train, exterminate bandits and evil cultivators, and track down outsiders and descenders. It won't be long before they assign me a mission, Su Fong nodded. Ling Xiaozi continued. This disciple has come this time to report an important matter to senior uncle. What is it? In another few tens of thousands of years, a primal chaos, heavenly tide, will appear in the Western Profound Divine region. This is a great opportunity for senior uncle. Senior uncle must not miss it. Primal chaos, heavenly tide? What the hell was that? Ling Xiaozi explained to Su Fong. As it turned out, the so-called primal chaos, heavenly tide was a grand event that occurred once every epoch in the Western Profound Divine region. Every epoch in the primal chaos void not far from the Western Profound Divine region. A shocking amount of primal chaos energy would suddenly erupt and form a region of 10,000 kilometers in radius. This phenomenon was not uncommon in the 9 great divine realms of the human world. However, the primal chaos heavenly tide of the Western Profound Divine region was different. Every time a primal chaos heavenly tide occurred, amazing treasures would erupt along with it. These treasures included spirit items that were very difficult to find in the human world. There were also all kinds of materials that were naturally born in the primal chaos. There were gems, minerals, materials, and even the corpses of foreign race experts. What was even more peculiar was that there were also some items that contained profound heavenly marks that were immensely beneficial to a cultivator's comprehension of the heavenly Tao. Some people guessed that the other end of the primal chaos heavenly tide was connected to a world of powerful foreign races. The treasures that erupted from the primal chaos heavenly tide all came from foreign races. Such an opportunity naturally attracted countless cultivators from the various divine realms. Every time a primal chaos heavenly tide erupted, countless experts would rush to the Western Profound Divine region ahead of time. Naturally, the Western Profound Divine region would not let the cultivators of the other divine realms have such an opportunity to obtain treasures for free. Similarly, the other divine realms would not let the Western Profound Divine region monopolize it. Therefore, after paying a huge price, the other divine realms would be allocated a certain number of spots to participate in the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide treasure hunt. Not every cultivator in the Western Profound Divine region had the right to search for treasures in the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide as they wished. Similarly, there was a strict limit to the number of people who could participate. The majority of the spots were taken by the Western Profound Mountain, while the other forces took up a very small portion of the spots. The spots of the Western Profound Mountain were divided among the various dojos. Su Fong was a peak master, so he naturally received a few spots as well. However, not all cultivators could participate in the treasure hunt. There were also restrictions on the cultivator's cultivation. Tao Saints were not allowed to enter the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide area. That was because Tao Saints were too powerful. Once they took action, they would cause chaos in the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide and cause unpredictable disasters. Thus, Tao Saints were strictly prohibited from participating. The Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide erupting, other than the eruption of treasures, also contained great danger. If one was not careful, they would lose their lives. Only Tao Void and Tao Profound cultivators could participate in the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide treasure hunt. Ling Xiao continued with his introduction. The majority of the treasures that the Western Profound Mountain cultivators obtain in the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide will be handed over. They can only keep a small portion of them. However, the value of these treasures is incomparably shocking. Furthermore, the dojos that obtain the most treasures will be rewarded handsomely by the higher-ups. Thus, every mountain will compete with each other for the spots in the final ranking. When will the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide erupt? Although the Primal Chaos Heavenly Tide will erupt every epoch, there will be a gap of tens of thousands of years between each occurrence. Thus, no one can say for sure. It might happen within the next 10,000 years, or it might take more than 100,000 years. Now, before the experts of the other divine domains and the primal chaos, heavenly tide erupt, strange phenomena will appear. At that time, the higher-ups will inform the various peaks to allocate the spots for the treasure hunt. I see. I understand. The primal chaos heavenly tide that occurs once every epoch is a grand event for the Western Profound Mountain and the entire human world. Uncle Master, you must not miss it. Retracting this thought, Su Fong continued to concentrate all his energy on cultivation. He did not care much about the primal chaos heavenly tide. He did not lack any treasures now. He had just obtained that cocoon from the strange Silence Peak. What treasure could compare to such a wondrous treasure? Moreover, the calamity of the human race was imminent. The most important thing now was to increase his cultivation. No matter how powerful a treasure was, it had to be based on cultivation. Otherwise, it would be difficult to unleash the treasure's true power. In the blink of an eye, another 3,000 years had passed. The entire Western Profound Mountain was preparing for the primal chaos heavenly tide. Experts and geniuses from various divine domains had already arrived at the Western Profound Divine Domain, waiting for the primal chaos heavenly tide to erupt. Heaven-chasing peak. After Western Profound, Tianqing advanced to the Tao Profound realm. He changed his surname back to Chen Tianqing and was conferred the title of Elder. Heaven-chasing peak was also given to him as a training ground. Heaven-chasing peak was a peak second only to those Tao Saint experts' residences. Chen Tianqing had just advanced to the Tao Profound realm and became the master of Heaven-chasing peak. It was enough to show the importance that the sovereign attached to him, forming a stark contrast with Su Fong. At this moment, Heaven-chasing peak was holding a banquet for guests. In the dazzling main hall, Chen Tianqing sat high on the main seat. The current him swept away the decadence and dispiritedness that he had during the test at Tongxian Gate. He was high-spirited and in high spirits. The guests at the training ground were experts and geniuses from other divine domains. The Tao Profound and Tao Void Realm Taoists of the Central Profound Divine Domain's 5 major tribes had all come. There were also Tao Profound and Tao Void Realm experts from other divine domains. The Eastern Profound Divine Domain's people were Dongxian Wuhan, Dongxian Qianyang, and the rest. After the Jiushuan Heavenly Selection, they had all successfully advanced to the Tao Profound Realm. Dongxian Dao Yin and Dongxian Hui Wang did not come. It was said that they had gone to the Southern Profound battlefield. After 3 rounds of wine, a young man from the Hu people stood up and said, "Brother Tianqing, when this seat passed by Tongxian Gate before entering the Western Profound Mountain, I heard that someone made Tongxian Gate light up with a Xianguang. Is this true?" This person was the Hu people's Tao Profound Realm Taoist. His name was Hu Chong, and his cultivation base was at the peak of Upper Tao Profound Realm. His aura was incomparably powerful, not weaker than some of the Tao Void experts in the palace. The palace was instantly silent. Chen Tianqing's face darkened. The Tongxian Gate test had become a disgrace that he could not wash away for the rest of his life. Now that the Hu people's Taoist had mentioned it in public, it was equivalent to being slapped in the face in public. How could Chen Tianqing be happy? At this time, a Western Profound cultivator said loudly, "The Western Profound Mountain's higher-ups have long found out that Su Fong cheated in the Tongxian Gate test. They were punished and sent to a desolate place like Strange Silence Peak. Young Master Tianqing is the undisputed #1 in the Tongxian Gate test. There is no doubt about this." The cultivators from other divine regions were suddenly enlightened. Hu Chong smiled indifferently and said disdainfully, "The Western Profound Divine Region's Tongxian Gate test is a little too easy. It's a pity that this seat can't take the test in the Tongxian Gate, or else it will definitely exceed 9,000 feet. Chen Tianqing snorted and said, "When the chaos tide erupts, you will naturally have the chance to show your edge and suppress all the experts." Hu Chong said domineeringly, "Suppress all the experts? This seat dares not be so arrogant. If there is a chance, this seat will definitely trample that Su Fong under my feet." Jiuquan's heaven's chosen has no chance. I heard that he has already advanced to the Dao profound realm. This is a good chance to compete with him. Dongxian Wuhan said numbly. I'm just afraid that if we can't trample Su Fong under our feet, we will end up like Hu Ditian. Hu people and cultivators glared at each other. The atmosphere of the banquet became tense. Suddenly, boom, an incomparably powerful aura suddenly descended upon the western profound mountain. Chapter 30:51. Someone ascended and attracted the power of the heavenly tribulation. Who ascended and attracted the aura of the heavenly tribulation? Could be a Dao Void elite breaking through to Dao Saint? Western Mystic Mountain originally had 9 Dao Saints. If another Dao Saint elite is added, there will be 10 Dao Saints. Western Mystic Divine Realm's overall strength will definitely increase greatly. Everyone was aghast. Ascending to Dao Saint was not a small matter. In the human world, once one ascended to Dao Saint, the divine realm they were in would invite elites and hold a grand ceremony to celebrate. The elites in the palace walked out one after another and looked in the direction of the heavenly tribulation. Unfortunately, they could only see the area at the southern edge of Western Mystic Mountain. The tribulation clouds rolled in the sky, but they were blocked by a powerful divine aura. They could not see which mountain it was. Strange, looking at the aura of the heavenly tribulation, it doesn't seem like a Dao Void cultivator ascending to Dao Saint. Instead, it's somewhat like a Dao Void Great Tribulation. What kind of Dao Profound cultivator would condense a tribulation cloud of 300,000 miles in area for a Dao Void Great Tribulation? If this person is really a Dao Profound cultivator, he must be an extremely powerful leapfrog. Once he ascends to Dao Void, I'm afraid he can rival middle Dao Void Realm, or even upper Dao Void Realm. To think that Western Mystic actually has such a powerful Dao Profound cultivator. He will definitely be another Supreme Dao Saint in the future. Everyone was shocked and discussing. Even that incomparably arrogant middle mystic Hu people, Dao Profound Realm Dao Child, Hu Chong, also revealed a shocked and jealous expression at this moment. Chun Tianqing looked in the direction where the tribulation clouds appeared, his eyes full of disbelief. That was because the direction where the heavenly tribulation appeared was precisely where Strange Silence Peak was located. When Su Fong took the test at Profound Opening Gate, he had just ascended to Upper Dao Profound Realm not long ago. Without several 100,000 years of accumulation, it's impossible to break through to Dao Void Realm. The person transcending the tribulation now is definitely not him. Chun Tianqing's heart only calmed down after his analysis. Actually, Chun Tianqing's guess was right. The one transcending the tribulation now was not someone else, but precisely Su Fong. Accumulating and cultivating in Strange Silence Peak for several tens of thousands of years, he had king-grade medicinal pills and also obtained large amounts of primordial energy from the cocoon inside Strange Silence Peak. In addition, Su Fong had already cultivated the Wuji Sutra of Jiuquan to the 5th level, which was enough for him to reach the cultivation realm. Originally, it would have taken hundreds of thousands of years, or even longer, to break through to the Dao Void Realm. But now, it was a matter of course. Su Fong originally didn't want to undergo the tribulation on Strange Silence Peak. That would cause too much of a commotion and attract too much attention. However, leaving the Western Black Mountain and entering the Primal Chaos was not an easy task. Furthermore, it was not that safe either. Therefore, Su Fong specially invited his senior apprentice brother Ian Patian to protect him and use his divine aura to cover Strange Silence Peak and its surroundings. As soon as Su Fong's tribulation aura was released, the terrifying aura of a breakthrough surged into the world and disappeared without a trace. Following which, tribulation clouds appeared, converging into a vast expanse of dark clouds that enveloped the skies above the Strange Silence Peak. The tribulation clouds were truly astonishing. It actually covered an area of more than 300,000 miles. Such an astonishing tribulation cloud was comparable to the Tao Saint heavenly tribulation of a Tao Void Realm expert. The Great Tribulation of the Tao Void Realm had a total of 9 calamities. It was 10 times more powerful than the Great Tribulation of the Tao Profound Realm. However, compared to Su Fang's cultivation base, the degree of danger was far less terrifying than the Great Tribulation of the Tao Profound Realm. Cultivators of the Tao Void Realm would go one step further in their search for the true meaning of the Great Tao. They would no longer have the same mysterious feeling towards the ethereal heavenly Tao as Tao Profound Realm cultivators. Instead, they would completely break away from the shackles of their predecessors. They would see everything as emptiness and then comprehend the true meaning within the emptiness. If they could see through the emptiness and obtain the true meaning of the great Tao from the emptiness, they would be able to become a saint in one step. That would be the Tao Saint Realm. Tao Void Realm cultivators could completely leave the profound world where the human race lived and survive in the primal chaos. Moreover, they could derive their own great Tao in the primal chaos where everything was void and display their peerless divine abilities. This little junior brother of mine is extraordinary, very extraordinary. No wonder Master thinks so highly of him and became the #1 genius of the human race. Compared to him, Chen Tianqing is still too far away. After passing through this tribulation, he will no longer be a genius, but a genuine, powerful expert. I'm afraid it won't be long before he catches up to me, a Tao saint. Yin Patian watched Su Fang pass through the tribulation from afar. Seeing that the tribulation clouds had already formed, he was also very shocked. At this time, swoosh! The first wave of the heavenly tribulation descended with a loud bang. Su Fang sensed it and immediately discovered that within the aura of the heavenly tribulation, there was an incomparably profound chi of origin. It actually contained a trace of primordial energy. The heavenly tribulation did not seem very powerful. However, with the addition of primordial energy, the power of the heavenly tribulation would definitely skyrocket by more than 10 times. However, although Su Fang's cultivation was only at the upper stage of the Tao Profound stage, he had already reached the height of the Tao Void Realm long ago. Moreover, he was not an ordinary Tao Void Realm cultivator, but an upper stage. Even if the heavenly tribulation was 10 times stronger than an ordinary Tao Void Realm calamity, it would only pierce through the sky at the middle stage of the Tao Void Realm. Why would Su Fang be afraid of anything? Whoosh! The aura of the first heavenly tribulation swept over in an instant and turned into shocking tribulation wind, tribulation fire, and tribulation lightning. With an earth-shattering force, it crashed towards Su Fang. Break for me! A burst of will exploded. Mana, Taoist rhymes, and will quickly condensed into a 9 suns wheel that rolled out and blocked the tribulation wind, tribulation fire, and tribulation lightning that poured down, causing an earth-shattering explosion. The heavenly tribulation that contained primordial energy was indeed shocking. Su Fang's 10,000 forms heavenly wheel at this time was enough to suppress an expert at the middle stage of the Tao Void Realm. The result of the collision between the 9 suns heavenly wheel and the heavenly tribulation was that both sides were injured and shattered at the same time. The second heavenly tribulation came right after. It became even fiercer and more domineering, but it still could not threaten Su Fang. Using his will to condense the heavenly wheel, he released the heavenly wheel of yin yang and the heavenly wheel of heaven and earth. He easily shattered the second heavenly tribulation and sent it flying in all directions. When Yin Patian saw the power of the heavenly tribulation, he was still worried for Su Fang. At this time, when he saw Su Fang casually shatter 2 heavenly tribulations in succession, he was once again shocked and sighed. Just as the third heavenly tribulation was still brewing, Yin Patian suddenly looked towards the sky in shock. His gaze passed through the outermost boundary of the Shixian world and saw the chaotic void within the endless domain. Not only in Patian, from the Shixian mountain, there were many powers of perception that were at the same height as Yin Patian were even stronger than Empatian. They also looked towards the depths of the endless domain. A moment later, whoosh, a sound like a flood, as if it came from the ethereal heavenly Tao, suddenly came from the chaos outside the boundary into the Shishian mountain. Every cultivator could hear it clearly. But what most cultivators could not see was that in the endless domain far away from the Shishian mountain, the calm and dark void suddenly became chaotic. Ripples rippled and mysteries surged wildly, spreading in all directions as if something was erupting from within. The heavenly tide of chaos was about to erupt. Empatian looked at Su Fong, who was undergoing the heavenly tribulation, and raised his eyebrows. How can it be so unlucky that the heavenly tide of chaos is erupting when Su Fong is undergoing the heavenly tribulation? From a heavenly tide of chaos appearance to the true eruption, only a mere 300 years had passed. And after Su Fong underwent the heavenly tribulation, he needed a long time to stabilize his realm. Even if he had the Xianbao of time, it would be very difficult for him to reach the normal state of the lower Dao Void realm in a short time. Empatian shook his head and sighed. It seems that Su Fong will miss this heavenly tide of chaos. What a pity, but this is also good. If he shows off again in this heavenly tide of chaos, he will probably attract the jealousy of countless people. Following the appearance of the heavenly tide of chaos, the entire Shishian mountain began to boil. Those Dao profound and Dao void experts who had been impatient for a long time impatiently began to prepare to go to the heavenly tide of chaos. No one paid attention to Su Fong's heavenly tribulation anymore. Under Su Fong's great power, the heavenly tribulation was smashed into pieces. In the end, the ninth heavenly tribulation came aggressively, as if it wanted to swallow Su Fong and the entire Strange Silence Peak, completely erasing the existence of Su Fong and Strange Silence Peak. Su Fong used my Lord's 10 Directions seal, shattering the heavenly tribulation wind, heavenly tribulation fire, and heavenly tribulation lightning that came surging over. With the disappearance of the ninth heavenly tribulation, it meant that Su Fong's heavenly tribulation had ended at this time, and what was about to welcome was his advancement. Whoosh! A ray of auspicious light descended from the tribulation cloud, sweeping away the various auras of calamity just now. As soon as Su Fong absorbed the power of baptism into his body began to burn with heavenly tribulation fire. The power of advancement surged and swept wantonly in his body. Su Fong's physical body, Dao Palace, and Dharma body all began to shatter, and rapidly reconstructed and transformed amidst the shattering. After enduring this great pain for nearly a month, the impact power in his body finally gradually calmed down. This also indicated that Su Fong had crossed the limits of Dao Profound at this time, and became a Dao Void expert. This advancement is really too timely. To be able to advance to Dao Void realm before the human race's heavenly tribulation descends, it's all thanks to Saint Sovereign Sieju's king-grade medicinal pills and the primordial energy that the cocoon gave me. Su Fong's heart was brimming with great joy. That sense of urgency that suppressed in his heart before could finally be relaxed a little. Looking at the changes in his body again, his physical body, Dao Palace, and Dharma body were all 10 times more profound than Dao Profound realm. Even the primordial energy in the deepest part of Jiuquan Dao Palace was more than 10 times more than before. His Dao heart and Dao body had undergone a considerable transformation. I reckon that with my current strength, it's not difficult to defeat an expert at the peak of Upper Dao Void realm, and I can even contend with an ordinary Dao Saint. However, it's very difficult to win. After all, Dao Saint and Dao Void are two completely different realms. How many Dao Saint experts were there in the entire human race? Those were all old monsters who had cultivated for countless eras. Cultivation, divine powers, Xianbao, Su Fong simply could not compare with them. Although Su Fong was a powerful leapfrog, it was impossible for him to cross the huge gap between Dao Void and Dao Saint. Being able to have the qualifications to confront Dao Saints was already quite heaven-defying. No matter what, My current strength has already entered the ranks of the top experts. Chapter 3052. Little junior brother, congratulations. Patian teleported over and glanced at Su Fong. A hint of shock flashed in his deep eyes. Although Su Fong's aura was very empty at this time, the feeling he gave Patian was not like facing a newly ascended Void Dao cultivator, but a peerless Dao saint at the same level as him. Thank you, senior brother, for protecting me. Su Fong cupped his fists and thanked Patian sincerely. We are brothers, no need to thank me. Take these medicinal pills and recover some strength quickly. It would be best if you can make it in time for the chaos tide to erupt, but don't force yourself if you can't. With a thought, Patian took out a storage ring and flew towards Su Fong. Su Fong caught the storage ring and sensed the space inside the storage ring, and was immediately shocked. There were actually 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills and 1,000 peak supreme-grade medicinal pills in the storage ring. There were also 5 medicinal pills, and they were actually king-grade medicinal pills. With so many medicinal pills of such high quality, within Potion's identity and strength, it was definitely a huge fortune. Potion's shocking generosity shocked Su Fong Da. Su Fong hurriedly refused. Senior brother, this is too precious. I can't accept it. It's just a little medicinal pill. Just take it as a little token of senior brother. Accept it. The chaos tide has appeared. The sovereign is probably going to call the higher-ups for a meeting soon, so I won't stay here. Patian did not allow Su Fong to refuse. After saying that, his figure escaped into the void and disappeared without a trace. Su Fong also understood that Patian also saw his potential, so he took out so many medicinal pills at once to get closer to him. The reality was like this. If your strength was not enough, no matter how close you were, you would not be valued by others. When you had enough strength or amazing potential, everyone would want to get close to you. Su Fong returned to Strange Silence Peak, and what awaited him were the shocked and reverent eyes of many cultivators under his command. These few years at Strange Silence Peak, quite a number of experts under Su Fong's command all advanced to Dao Profound Realm. Bai Ling and Qingyu both had Dao Profound Strength. Du Jixiang, this girl, successfully advanced to the Dao Profound Realm. But ever since having the pleasure of a man and woman with Su Fong the last time, the two people did not have any overly intimate actions anymore. The improvement of these cultivators under him could be said to be astonishing, but compared to Su Fong's speed of improvement, it was still far inferior. Moreover, the heavenly tribulation that Su Fong had attracted was so shocking, and he had successfully overcome it so easily. This shocked all the cultivators under him, and they naturally became unswervingly loyal to Su Fong. Su Fong entered the cave residence. Within the Fuyao Immortal's cave abode of time, he wantonly devoured medicinal pills to make up for the emptiness in his body caused by his advancement. He had stayed in Fuyao's cavern for more than 1,000 years. With the help of the extraordinary medicinal power of the king-grade medicinal pill, Su Fong's body was no longer as empty as before, but it was still not at the normal level of the lower realm of the Taosu realm. Suddenly, Su Fong's brows furrowed, ending his cultivation, and headed straight for the interior of Strange Silence Peak, arriving at the cave where that silkworm cocoon was located. These few years, Su Fong had continuously fused his own primordial qi, the blood threads of the heaven-piercing Blood King vine, as well as his consciousness into the interior of the silkworm cocoon. Because he was worried that it would affect the life inside the silkworm cocoon, he continuously permeated and fused his blood threads and consciousness, but did not seize the body. However, there was a subtle connection between him and that silkworm cocoon, feeling as if it was a part of his body. Just earlier, Su Fong sensed that the interior of the silkworm cocoon emitted a movement, and the life nurtured within actually had some signs of being born. Su Fong analyzed that it was most likely due to the spiritual qi and world aura that Su Fong had plundered these few years that the life inside the silkworm cocoon had already grown to a certain height. In addition, After he had successfully overcome the tribulation previously, that kind of auspicious baptism power that descended from the heavenly tribulation was also absorbed quite a bit by the silkworm cocoon. Therefore, it prompted the life inside the silkworm cocoon to be born. It's a pity that once that life is born, it will no longer be able to spit out the silk that contains primordial chi. I wonder what kind of monster the life born from the silkworm cocoon will be. Su Fong felt that it was a pity, but at the same time, he was filled with anticipation. However, it would not be so easy for that life to break out of the silkworm cocoon. As the life inside the silkworm cocoon had fused with Su Fong's blood essence and power, Su Fong felt a blood connection with it, and could even understand the life's consciousness. Su Fong could sense that the life still needed a large amount of energy to successfully break out of the silkworm cocoon. Su Fong thought for a moment, then urged the heaven-piercing Blood King vine to frenziedly devour the various essences left in the corpses of the remaining cocoon race cultivators in the Dao Palace, and then seep them into his body. Next, Su Fong unleashed his divine might, condensing all the essences into a ball of energy, and struck it at the silkworm cocoon. Asterisk sizzle, asterisk the energy rapidly seeped into the silkworm cocoon, and was frantically devoured by the life inside. The life's devouring ability was astonishing. In less than 10 days, it had completely devoured the remaining millions of cocoon race cultivators in Su Fong's Dao Palace. However, the life inside the silkworm cocoon still showed no signs of breaking out. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's go all out. Su Fong gritted his teeth and took out pills. He used his divine might to refine the medicinal essence in the pills into energy, and then let the silkworm cocoon continue to devour. The silkworm cocoon continued to devour the pills, and there was still no sign of movement. Su Fong continued to extract the essence of the pills to feed the silkworm cocoon. The loss of pills was astonishing, and it made him feel as if a knife was stabbing his heart. Su Fong had used up all the pills on him, and even more than half of the supreme-grade pills that Patian had just given him. Just as he was about to give up, the silkworm cocoon finally moved. Puff! Puff! Inside the silkworm cocoon, the life began to attack the silkworm cocoon, but it was clearly powerless. Let's go all out. Su Fong also threw caution to the wind. He took out a king-grade pill, turned it into essence, and swept it towards the silkworm cocoon. The essence of the king-grade pill was boundless, and after it was devoured by the life inside the silkworm cocoon, an extremely savage voice came from within, causing Su Fong's Dao heart to involuntarily tremble. Su Fong had already fused more than half a bottle of frostbone chalcedony with the 7 colors Vajra Dao heart. His Dao heart was extremely powerful, but it was still shaken by that voice, and his will almost wavered. It was clear how terrifying that life was. Su Fong was both surprised and delighted, and the anticipation in his heart grew even stronger. Puff! A gray beetle tore open the silkworm cocoon and crawled out. The beetle was only 1 foot long and looked no different from an ordinary beetle. However, its entire body exuded a savage aura that caused Su Fong's heart to palpitate. It gave Su Fong the feeling that he was facing a powerful beast born from chaos. Such an astonishing life form surpassed the sky-piercing Blood King vine and even the weaver spider. Although Su Fong did not know what ability it had, he could conclude that this insect was definitely extraordinary, extremely extraordinary. Sensing the aura of the silkworm cocoon, Su Fong was so happy that he could not close his mouth. He had lost the weaver spider, but unexpectedly obtained such a strange insect. It could be considered as making up for it. Crack! Crack! The beetle swallowed the broken silkworm cocoon in a few mouthfuls. It was hard to tell that such a small body could eat so much. After eating the silkworm cocoon, the gray beetle looked at Su Fong and let out a sharp whistle. Its figure flashed, and in an instant, it appeared in front of Su Fong. Su Fong Dao was shocked. However, in the next moment, the gray beetle landed on his shoulder. It did not seem to have any intention of attacking him. Instead, it crawled up and down, appearing to be very affectionate with him. Moreover, the feeling that the consciousness of the primordial spirit revealed was as if Su Fong was its mother. "I have another son." Su Fong smiled bitterly and helplessly. After the gray beetle crawled on Su Fong's body for a while, Su Fong sucked it into his Tao palace. "I don't know what this gray beetle is used for. Let's not worry about it for now. I'll slowly think about it when I have time in the future." The gray beetle was clearly still in its infancy, so Su Fong did not expect it to be of any use now. The chaos tide was about to erupt, so he had to make preparations in advance. Su Fong originally did not have much interest in the chaos tide, but this time, the gray beetle had almost eaten him to the bone, so he changed his mind. He was prepared to fish for some treasures in the chaos tide to exchange for resources. After all, he still had so many subordinates to feed. He continued to devour elixirs in Fu Yao's cave abode. About 10,000 years had passed, and more than 100 years had passed in the outside world. Although Su Fong had not cultivated to the normal state of the lower Tao void realm, he was not far away. On this day, Buzz, the elder token in his body vibrated. When he took it out to take a look, a dignified voice came from it. "All peak masters are to come to the punishment hall for a meeting. There are at most 100 years before the chaos tide erupts. The punishment hall has summoned all the peak masters for the chaos tide. I didn't expect the punishment hall to preside over the chaos tide. It'll probably be a little troublesome." Su Fong furrowed his brows. He had already offended the elders of the punishment hall before. And Su Fong also learned from Ling Xiaozi that Chun Tianqing's biggest backer in the Western Mystery Mountain was the Western Mystery Mountain's first elder of punishment. In the Western Mystery, there were many disciples under the Western Mystery Daozu. As Daozu almost never showed himself, the disciples usually cultivated under the guidance of other experts, and each had their own backers. Chun Tianqing's backer was the first elder of punishment. This was also the reason why he could call the wind and summon the rain in the Western Mystery Mountain. But Su Fong did not care. He was the only one qualified to participate in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt in the Strange Silence Peak. He had Tao Profound Realm cultivators under his command, and they were also considered disciples of the Strange Silence Peak. But with their strength, participating in the Chaos Tide treasure hunt was tantamount to courting death. So to be able to get a spot, Su Fong was fine. He was not afraid of the punishment hall targeting him. Thinking about it, Su Fong put on the Hen Wuxiang mask and appeared with the appearance he had when participating in the Jiuquan Heaven selection. He also deliberately suppressed his cultivation to the height of upper Tao Profound Realm. Except for those powerful Tao saints, it was very difficult to see that he was already a void Tao expert. He did not do this intentionally. The Chaos Tide was a grand event to hunt for treasures. If a void Tao cultivator participated, he would definitely become the target of experts from all sides. Su Fong intentionally hid his cultivation with Hen Wuxiang because he did not want to be the focus of attention. When the time came, he would just make a fortune quietly. Chapter 3053. The Punishment Hall was located on the west side of the Western Mystery Mountain's main peak. When Su Fong entered that awe-inspiring and dignified main hall, many peak masters had already arrived. Seeing the cold mask on Su Fong's face, everyone was stunned. However, when Su Fong was chosen by the heavens in the Jiuquan, he appeared with the appearance of Hen Wuxiang. Many of the Western Mystery Mountain's experts had seen him before and quickly recognized his identity. Other than an elder from the Heaven-Breaking Peak and Wine Saint Peak's Ling Xiaozi who greeted him, everyone else kept a respectful distance from him, feeling as if he carried a plague on him. Chun Tianqing was the master of the Heaven-Chasing Peak. At this moment, he was also in the punishment hall. When he saw Su Fong, he first breathed a sigh of relief, then snorted disdainfully. It turned out that Chun Tianqing had been worried that the one who attracted the astonishing void Tao heavenly tribulation was Su Fong. Now that he saw that Su Fong was still at the upper Tao Profound Realm, he naturally breathed a sigh of relief. Apart from the main peak, the Western Mystery Mountain had a total of 1,080 peaks and 1,080 experts. The one with the lowest cultivation was Chun Tianqing, a lower Dao profound realm cultivator who had advanced not long ago. The one with the highest cultivation was a Dao Saint expert. Of course, the Dao Saint expert did not appear this time. The ones who came were the elders of the training hall. The 1,080 experts stood according to the rankings of the peaks they were at. The Strange Silence Peak was the last peak, so Su Fong was naturally arranged to be at the very end. He was an existence that could be completely ignored. After waiting in the main hall for 6 hours, a black-robed elder, escorted by a group of punishment hall elders, passed through the array formation and came out. The hall, which was originally noisy, quieted down in an instant. That elder's aura was illusory. If one did not see him with their eyes, they would not be able to sense his aura at all. It was as if his entire person did not exist. Su Fong looked at that elder and could not help but feel a sense of awe. He is the first elder of the Western Mystery Mountain's Punishment Hall, and also one of the 3 first elders of the Western Mystery Mountain. His cultivation and status are even higher than the sovereign. The black-robed elder's cold gaze swept over everyone. Then he said majestically, "The chaos tide is about to erupt." This time, the sovereign let the punishment hall preside over the heavenly tide treasure, seizing matter, and summoned all peak masters here to emphasize some of the rules of the heavenly tide treasure seizing, as well as the allocation of each peak. All the peak masters stood respectfully and listened attentively. "Of the hall's disciples will punish you severely if you violate this rule." The voice of the first elder of the punishment hall was filled with an unparalleled murderous intent. The hearts of the peak masters trembled as they felt a chill run down their spines. As for other cultivators, whether they come from Shixian or other divine realms, they are not included in this rule. Although the punishment hall's first elder did not say it clearly, his meaning was clear. As long as they were not from the Western Mystery Mountain, they could rob without any scruples and could even kill. This meant that there would be a storm of blood during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing this time. Of course, the Western Mystery Mountain cultivators could rob the treasures of others and kill cultivators of other factions, but the experts of other factions could also kill and rob. This was not a battle between geniuses, but a battle for treasures and fortunes. It was cruel, bloody, and completely abided by the laws of nature. Everyone should know that the present situation of the human race is not optimistic. Shixian also needs to plan for the future. This chaos tide is a chance. How many treasures we can seize will increase the strength of Shixian Mountain, and you will have a greater chance of survival. Therefore, the sovereign has decided that the resources of each peak will be distributed according to the number of treasures offered during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing this time. Great rewards will be given to the dojos that contribute the most. As for how the contribution will be calculated, when the punishment hall allocates the quotas to each peak, you will also be given a detailed method of accumulating points. Everyone, this Chaos Tide is an opportunity for all of you and also a great opportunity for our Western Mystery Mountain. Everyone must work hard and live up to the expectations of the sovereign and me. The punishment hall's cold gaze swept slowly across everyone. Then he nodded to everyone, and his figure instantly turned into nothingness, disappearing from the punishment hall without a trace. Next, the punishment hall cultivators began to distribute jade slips. Su Fong grabbed the jade slip and sent his consciousness into it. A large amount of information surged into his mind. There was a lot of information in the jade slip, including the rules of accumulating points during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing, as well as some things to pay attention to during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing, as well as some detailed information about the experts participating in the Chaos treasure seizing this time. The method of accumulating points was very simple. The treasures that erupted from the Chaos Tide were divided into 5 grades: low grade, mid grade, high grade, supreme grade, and king grade. Points were then accumulated according to the quality of the treasures. The more points the cultivators of each peak accumulated, the higher their results would naturally be, and the greater the rewards and resources they would receive in the future. What surprised Su Fong was that the information also mentioned a treasure that was not within the 5 grades, but beyond the king grade. The information especially emphasized that once they encountered a treasure beyond the king grade, they had to obtain it at all costs, even if they had to exchange their lives for it. The other Western Mystery Mountain cultivators also had to put down everything they were doing and assist in seizing the treasure seizing. There are treasures beyond the king grade? What kind of amazing supreme treasure is that? Su Fong was shocked, and at the same time, he felt a burning heat in his heart. In addition, there were some things to pay attention to during the Chaos Tide treasure seizing. This experience had been accumulated by the Western Mystery Mountain cultivators during the Chaos Tide eruptions time and time again. Countless experts had even exchanged their lives for this experience. It was extremely important for everyone to be able to save their lives at a critical moment. The information about the experts of the other factions and the God Realm was also extremely detailed. It could be seen how much importance the Western Mystery Mountain attached to this Chaos Tide treasure seizing and had done their homework in advance. After deciphering the information in the Jade Slip, the next step was to distribute the tokens. Every cultivator participating in the Chaos Tide treasure seizing was given a token. Not only was it a token to participate in the Chaos Tide, but it could also release a protective divine aura to protect the cultivators in the Chaos Tide and reduce the danger level. Every time the Chaos Tide erupted, the number of cultivators who entered the Chaos Tide to seize the treasures was limited to 100,000. If the number exceeded this number, it would trigger chaos and cause many deaths and injuries. As the Western Mystery Mountain was the host, they had 50,000 slots. The other half of the slots were taken by the other god realms and factions. 50,000 slots seemed like a lot, but in reality, each peak would not be able to get many slots after being distributed to the 1,080 peaks. Therefore, the number of slots allocated was also a ranking of the strength of each peak. At the same time, it was also related to the future results and the distribution of resources. The dojos of Tao Saints have been given 1,000 slots, and almost 10,000 of them had been taken away. Then there were the more powerful peaks, with 100 slots at most and dozens at least. There were not many left. Chun Tianqing's heaven-chasing peak actually obtained 50 slots, making all of the peak masters' eyes red with envy. Although he had just advanced to the Tao Profound realm not long ago, the powerhouses who submitted to his dojos were truly quite a number. Their overall strength was not weak. Plus, he had the Punishment Head Elder, this great backer. Obtaining so many slots all of a sudden, the other dojos could only stare helplessly. The remaining few weaker dojos, the slots allocated to them were pitifully few. But no one had anything to say. Who asked their strength to be lacking? Finally, it was Su Fong's turn. That Punishment Hall elder who distributed the tokens looked at Su Fong and smiled coldly, then ignored Su Fong and said loudly to the many peak masters, "Everyone has already obtained the tokens. Each of you go back and prepare." A cold light flashed in Su Fong's eyes, and he asked in a solemn voice, "Why doesn't my strange silence peak have a slot?" That elder revealed an appearance of coming to a realization, then said apologetically, "Strange Silence Peak has always been ownerless." When the Punishment Hall was distributing the tokens, they left out Strange Silence Peak. "Truly very sorry." Then that elder put on an act and called out to the many peak masters, "Which peak master will give up a slot for Strange Silence Peak?" The slots for the Chaos Heavenly Tide were so precious. Which dojo would be willing to give it up for free? Moreover, these peak masters were all not fools. They could tell with one glance that the Punishment Hall was deliberately making things difficult for Su Fong, who would come out to offend the Punishment Hall at this time. Seeing no one speak, that elder said helplessly, "Apologies, the Punishment Hall is distributing all of the slots now, and the other dojos aren't willing to give up either. Strange Silence Peak can only give up this time. This seat guarantees that when the next Chaos Heavenly Tide comes, I'll definitely give Strange Silence Peak double the compensation." Next Chaos Heavenly Tide? When the next Chaos Heavenly Tide erupts, that would be an epic later. Punishment Hall, don't go too far. Su Fong looked at that elder, his eyes as cold as ice. That elder sneered disdainfully. "Su Fong, could it be that you want to rely on your identity as a disciple of the Daozu to be above the punishment hall? Many peak masters were looking at Su Fong. Some people felt that the punishment hall had gone too far this time. The dignified disciple of the Daozu, the number one genius of the human race, couldn't even get a token. It was really too much. There were also people who were gloating. Suddenly, Chun Tianqing shouted loudly, "Su Fong, this seat sees that you are pitiful, so I'll give you a token." Ling Xiaozi, who represented the Wine Saint Peak, shouted, "Uncle Master Su Fong, Wine Saint Peak doesn't lack tokens. As your disciple, I'll give you one." The elder from the heaven-breaking peak also took out 5 tokens, intending to give them to Su Fong. Unexpectedly, that elder from the punishment hall said firmly, "All tokens are distributed by the punishment hall. With the consent of the sovereign and the punishment hall grand elder, how can they be exchanged privately? Whoever dares to give the tokens to others without permission will be severely punished by the punishment hall. Punishment hall is clearly not planning to let me participate in this chaos heavenly tide treasure hunt." Su Fong shouted angrily. That elder said indifferently, "This seat didn't say that." Chapter 3054. If he couldn't get a medallion from the Western Mystery Mountain, couldn't he ask for one from the other divine realms? Besides, Su Fong was a disciple of the Dongxin Daozu. How could he not get a medallion from the Eastern Mystery divine realm? No matter how powerful the punishment hall was, could it extend to the Eastern Mystery divine realm? Only now did the peak lords and elders of the punishment hall realize that Su Fong was no ordinary cultivator, but the number one genius of the human race whose name shook the entire Zhoushuan. The elder said darkly, "Su Fong, are you thinking of betraying the Western Mystery Mountain?" Su Fong retorted, "The punishment hall won't give me a spot, so I'll go find one myself." Is this betraying the Western Mystery Mountain? What a great joke. I'm a disciple of the Daozu, but the punishment hall is bullying me like this. Is the punishment hall planning to betray the Daozu? The punishment hall elder was instantly speechless. The other peak lords also looked solemn. Su Fong's accusation was too great. Who could bear it? If the punishment hall still wants to stop me, I'll inform the entire Western mystery of how the punishment hall is suppressing me, a disciple of the Daozu. Not only that, Master also left a Dharma body in the Western Mystery Mountain. When the time comes, I'll pay a visit to Master and ask him to stand up for me. During the Zhoushuan Heaven Selection, Master was willing to let the Zhoushuan Heaven Selection disperse on bad terms for me. I'm sure he'll stand up for me this time as well. The Western Mystery Mountain treated Su Fong this way, so I'll treat them the same way. I'll take a spot to participate in the Chaos Tide myself, so any treasures obtained during the Chaos Tide will naturally belong to me. I won't take a single one out. Su Fong's lofty voice echoed in the air as he strode out of the punishment hall with his head held high. The faces of the elders of the disciplinary hall turned ashen. This time, not only did they fail to suppress Su Fong, but they were also ruthlessly slapped in the face by Su Fong. They were put on the spot in front of everyone, so one could imagine how they felt. Su Fong left the main peak and released his sensing ability. He sensed the peak of the Western Mystery Mountain that was used to entertain other divine realm cultivators and then directly teleported there. In the air above the mountain peak, Su Fong concealed his aura and sat cross-legged in the air, staring at the interior of the mountain peak. On the mountain peak, there were many presences that Su Fong was familiar with. Most of the presences were unfamiliar, but powerful. Those were the powerful experts from other factions of Shixian and other divine realms that were preparing to participate in the Chaos Tide. After waiting for a long time, when Su Fong saw more than 10 cultivators flying out from the mountain peak, he smiled embarrassedly. "It's you guys." Soon after, his figure disappeared from midair and reappeared in front of those cultivators, standing in midair with his hands behind his back. After a while, those cultivators flew over. That person looks familiar. Hen Wuxiang. No, he's Su Fong who destroyed Di Tian Daozi's physical body. Humph. This person killed Hu Yufei and destroyed Di Tian Daozi's physical body, causing Di Tian Daozi to be unable to recover. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely kill him to avenge Di Tian Daozi. It turned out that apart from 3 disciples of the Western Mystery Mountains dojo, the rest of these cultivators were Hu people from the Central Profound Divine Realm. The Central Profound Divine Realm's 5 great divine clans had dealings with the major factions of the other divine realms. Those who were able to participate in this chaos tide were at least Tao profound experts. When they came to the Western Mystery Mountain, some cultivators of the Western Mystery Mountain took the opportunity to befriend them. These cultivators of the Hu people were originally invited by a peak master to be guests. They never thought that they would be targeted by Su Fong, this malefic star. The Hu people and Su Fong had a deep grudge. When they saw Su Fong this time, these Hu people cultivators naturally gnashed their teeth in anger. However, they only dared to talk about it. In reality, they were filled with reverence towards Su Fong. How would they dare to provoke him? They stayed far away from where they were. Su Fong's figure flashed and blocked the path of the cultivators of the Hu people. He said to the Hu people, Tao profound cultivator who spoke arrogantly just now. Just now, you said that you'll kill me one day? That Hu people cultivator was so scared that he trembled. He gritted his teeth and said, Who are you? This seat doesn't know you. When did I say anything about you? This person was so scared that he didn't dare to admit it. A disciple of the Western Mystery Mountain hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed to Su Fong. Elder Su Fong, they are guests of the Western Mystery Mountain. Guests of the Western Mystery Mountain? Have you ever seen a guest who wants to kill their host? Su Fong shouted domineeringly, interrupting that disciple. Then he waved his hand and grabbed. His arm turned into a blood vine. With a whoosh, it stretched out and firmly wrapped around that Hu people cultivator. Then, with a shake of his wrist, Su Fong grabbed the vine and sucked it into his body through his palm. He locked the space inside his body. Let me tell you, the leader of the Hu people this time tried to kill me. If you want him to live, he'll have to pay a corresponding price, Su Fong said domineeringly. Then he left in embarrassment. Those Western Mystery Mountain disciples and Hu people cultivators were all dumbfounded. Su Fong returned to Strange Silence Peak and searched the Hu people cultivator. Sure enough, he found a command token on his body. Su Fong didn't hesitate to take the command token, along with all the treasures and resources on this Hu people cultivator. He took them all for himself. In less than an hour, a punishment hall elder brought Hu Chong and a dozen Hu people cultivators to the air above Strange Silence Peak. That punishment hall elder shouted at Strange Silence Peak, Su Fong, quickly come out. Su Fong's aura pierced through the barrier and turned into a lifelike figure. He coldly looked at that punishment hall elder and said indifferently, This lord is Daozu's direct disciple and the master of a peak. You, a mere elder, dare to shout at this lord. Do you know your crime? That punishment hall elder was furious, but he knew he was in the wrong. He cupped his fists towards Su Fong and said, Hu people have sent someone to the punishment hall. They said that Elder Su Fong captured a Hu people cultivator. Please come with this lord to the punishment hall to investigate. Su Fong said domineeringly, There's no need to investigate. Hu people cultivator was captured by this lord. The punishment hall elder's expression darkened. He shouted, How can Elder Su Fong capture someone for no reason? Quickly release him and apologize to the guests of the Hu people. Su Fong said indifferently, That Hu people cultivator publicly said that he wanted to kill me. That's why he was shackled by me. As a punishment hall elder, you haven't even investigated the matter clearly, yet you want this lord to release him and apologize. Are you an enforcer of the Western Mystery Mountain or a lackey of the Hu people? That punishment hall elder was momentarily speechless. In this way, Su Fong was still in the right. No one could say anything about him capturing that Hu people cultivator. Hu Chong suddenly said, Su Fong, what do you want? Su Fong said slowly, You Hu people cultivators arrogantly said that they wanted to kill this lord in the Western Mystery Mountain. This scared this lord witless and damaged this lord's Tao heart, making it difficult for this lord to cultivate peacefully. If you want to pacify this lord's Tao heart, you can only take out treasures. This lord will naturally release him. This lord isn't greedy. Just give me 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills. The number one genius of the Joshuan, an expert of the Tao profound realm, would also be scared witless? And 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills the moment he opened his mouth. Hu Chang's sword-like eyebrows rose in anger. Su Fang, don't go too far. You're unforgiving after gaining the upper hand. In the central, profound divine territory, it has always been you, Hu people, who go too far. Now it's this lord's turn. Why can't this lord go too far just this once? Su Fang said domineeringly with an embarrassed smile. The other Hu people cultivators all flew into a rage, and one after another, they angrily rebuked him. Elder Su Fang only wants medicinal pills. Hu people can still take out a mere 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills. Hu Chong revealed the lofty and domineering aura of the Hu people's Tao profound realm Tao child. With a wave of his hand, the storage ring flew towards Su Fang. Su Fang caught the storage ring and looked inside. As expected, there were 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills inside. He immediately revealed a smile. Hu people are indeed magnanimous. Since Hu people are willing to apologize, then this lord will also forgive Hu people this time. Su Fang's thoughts swept the storage ring and flew back to the strange silence peak. In less than a moment, a divine aura swept that Hu people cultivator who was captured by Su Fang out of the boundary. Hu Chong waved his hand and brought him to his side. That Hu people cultivator who had his shackles removed immediately let out a furious roar. Su Fang snatched away all my treasures and resources. Even the token to participate in the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide was snatched away by him. That punishment hall elder came to a sudden realization. The reason why Su Fang captured this Hu people cultivator was not for anything else but the token. Su Fang's actions are ruthless, decisive, and meticulous. It's best not to provoke such a character. The punishment hall elder's heart palpitated. He could not help but revere Su Fang in his heart. Useless trash. You can't even keep a token, but you still want to provoke Su Fang. You don't have to participate in the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide this time. Hu Chong shouted angrily at that unlucky Hu people cultivator. The other Hu people cultivators looked at the strange silence peak. Their eyes were filled with anger, fear, and dread. Su Fang, this lord will wait for you during the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide. Hu Chong shouted gloomily at the strange silence peak. Then, he led the Hu people cultivators away in embarrassment. You'd better pray that you don't meet me during the treasure hunt in the primal chaos tide. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the Hu people will be replaced by Tao profound and Tao void realm Taoists again. When Su Fang heard Hu Chong's threat in the strange silence peak, he sneered disdainfully. This time, not only did he get the token, he also extorted 10,000 supreme-grade medicinal pills from the Hu people. This was equivalent to solving Su Fang's urgent problem. There was still some time before the primal chaos tide. Next, Su Fang entered the Fuyao Immortal's cave and crazily swallowed medicinal pills. He strived to raise his cultivation to the normal state of Tao Void Realm when he participated in the primal chaos tide. 3,000 years passed in the Fuyao Immortal's cave. Su Fang suddenly opened his eyes. His face revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It turned out that the gray beetle that he kept in the Taoist palace had secretly swallowed his medicinal pills without restraint. By the time he discovered it, not only the supreme grade and supreme grade peak medicinal pills that Yin Patian had given him before, but also the 10,000 medicinal pills that he had just extorted from the Hu people had all been secretly eaten by it. Even the king grade medicinal pills had been secretly eaten by the gray beetle, as many as 3. Su Fang now only had 4 left. Su Fang was fuming with anger and almost vomited blood. He transmitted his thoughts to the gray beetle and reprimanded it. The gray beetle actually began to act shamelessly. It curled up into a ball and pretended to be dead. Su Fang did not know whether to laugh or cry. After secretly eating so many medicinal pills, Su Fang found that the gray beetle's body had grown bigger. There were more black spots on its body, and its aura had become more ferocious and terrifying. Su Fong had no choice but to seal the gray beetle in a vortex space in the Taoist palace. More than 100 years passed by in a flash. There were still several months before the primal chaos tide broke out. The primal chaos tide is about to break out. All the practitioners who have a token go to the tide-watching pavilion together. Chapter 3055. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. As the head elder of the Western Mystery Mountain spoke, all the cultivators in the mountains flew into the air and rushed to the plaza at the top of the main peak. On the plaza at the top of the main peak, there were 10 temporary profound gates that led directly to the chaotic void where the chaos tide would erupt. The 100,000 experts from the Western Mystery Mountain and the other divine realms stepped into the profound gates in batches. A wave of spatial distortion suddenly swept over and disappeared without a trace. Su Fong followed the experts of the Western Mystery Mountain into the profound gates. Bang! In an instant, Su Fong was swept up by the twisting divine might. Soon, the shackles around him disappeared and a formation appeared before him. It was as if he had come from an illusion to reality. He took a closer look. It turned out that he had followed the crowd to the chaotic void outside the Western Mystery Divine Realm and arrived at a huge floating tower. This tower was built for the sake of obtaining treasures from the chaos tide. From the tower, one could see the eruption of the chaos tide from afar, which was why it was called the Tide Viewing Tower. There was an extremely powerful barrier around the tower. Clearly, it was to prevent the chaos tide from exploding. 100,000 miles away from the tower, there was 100 miles of turbulent chaos chi. That was where the chaos tide was about to erupt. As the chaos chi surged, a shocking amount of energy was brewing within. It seemed that the chaos tide was about to erupt. There were countless experts floating in the void around the area where the chaos tide was about to erupt. The job of these experts was to prevent people from sneaking into the chaos tide. Entering the chaos tide without a token was equivalent to seeking death. However, there were always people who would give up their lives for treasures and charge into the chaos tide recklessly, only to lose their lives in the end. Apart from preventing people from sneaking into the chaos tide, these experts also had another mission, which was to collect the treasures that were accidentally swept away by the chaos tide. They might accidentally fly out of the area where the chaos tide was surging. At the highest point of the tower, there was a pavilion where many experts were leaning against the railings and watching. There were a total of 5 Tao Saint powerhouses from the Western Mystery Mountain, including the head elder of the punishments. There were also other forces from the Western Mystic Divine Domain and other big shots from other divine domains. They were all experts at the Tao Saint level. There were close to 40 Tao Saints in total. The lineup was so strong that it was not weaker than Jiuxuan's Heaven Chosen. Su Fong sensed a familiar aura among the giants. Apart from Shi Xian's Tao Saints, Xianzheng, Tuo, Qianji, Hu Pa, the Yi Race Tao Saint, and the other Tao Saints who had appeared in Jiuxuan were all present. Right now, the human race is at war with the foreign races in the southern profound divine region. Yet Xianzheng has appeared here and is even vainly trying to become the leader of the human race. This shows just how hypocritical he is. Su Fong looked at Xianzheng and sneered in his heart. In a huge square below the tower, there were 9 altars floating in the air. These altars were prepared for the experts from the Jiuxuan divine realm. However, one of the altars was completely empty. It belonged to the cultivators of the southern profound divine region. Since the southern profound divine region was fighting against the foreign invaders with all their might, no cultivators had come to search for treasures. Naturally, the altar was left empty. The quota that originally belonged to Nanxian was also divided among the various divine regions. Su Fong flew to the altar where the cultivators of the western profound divine region were and sat down cross-legged on the ground. Some of the western profound cultivators beside him moved away, leaving a large empty space around Su Fong, making him very conspicuous. It was obvious that Su Fong was excluded by the cultivators of the western profound divine region. However, Su Fong didn't care. He didn't expect to receive help from the western profound cultivators during the treasure hunt. he would rely on himself. Su Fong sensed that there were many powerful experts on the 8 altars. He couldn't help but be shocked. There were a total of 100,000 cultivators, and most of them were in the Tao Profound Realm. The number of Tao Void Realm experts was less than 10%. Apart from those who were participating in a war in the Southern Profound Divine region, almost all of the strongest human beings below the Tao Saint Realm were gathered here. It had to be said that this chaos tide was a grand event for the human race. It could be said that it was a gathering of the winds and clouds. Su Fong even discovered that there were more than 10 powerful experts whose auras were comparable to Tao Saints. Of course, they weren't Tao Saints, but experts at the peak of the Tao Void Realm from the 9 divine regions. All of them were qualified to fight with Tao Saints. Su Fong saw familiar faces on the altars where the cultivators of the Eastern Profound Divine region were. Dongxin Wuhan, Dongxin Xinyang, Dongxin Lai, and 3 other people that Su Fong didn't expect. They were Supreme Venerable Spring Autumn, Great Elder Changsun of the 3 highest profound sects, and Great Elder of the Luo Shao Sword sect. He didn't expect that they would also participate in this treasure hunt. It wasn't strange. The 3 of them were all in the upper Tao Void Realm. Although they were old, they were qualified to participate in this treasure hunt. Moreover, they were the top figures of the Eastern Profound Divine region. These 3 peerless experts that Su Fong had to look up to in the past were now fighting for treasures and fortunes together. This gave Su Fong a strange feeling, especially Supreme Venerable Spring Autumn and Great Elder Changsun. They had tried to steal Su Fong's spider back then. If they knew that Su Fong's current strength was on the same level as theirs, or even beyond theirs, one could only wonder how they would feel. Buzz, 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 Su Fong felt waves of murderous energy sweep past him. There were experts from the 5 great divine races of the Central Profound Divine region, especially the Hu people, the Yi clan, the Qitian Divine region, and the Hongtian Divine region. Su Fong had offended too many forces in the Jioshuan Divine region. It was normal for him to attract so many hateful gazes. Suddenly, buzz, buzz, buzz. On the altar where the Northern Profound Divine region's cultivators were, Su Fong accidentally sensed the aura of a Tao Void Realm cultivator. It actually caused the Tao runes of the Heavenly Secret Life, shrinking art, to flash rapidly in his mind. The Tao runes quickly formed an illusory figure in his mind. It was the young master of the Heavenly Coffin. Then, Su Fong's Heavenly Secret Life, shrinking art, sensed the Spider of Fate's aura. This proved that the Tao Void Realm expert disguised as a Northern Profound cultivator was the young master of the Heavenly Coffin. Moreover, Su Fong also sensed that the Spider of Fate's aura had become much stronger. It was obvious that the young master of the Heavenly Coffin had been feeding the Spider of Fate to make it stronger. Feeding the Spider of Fate was a very taboo. In the past, Su Fong didn't dare to let the Spider of Fate wantonly devour the fate of profound worlds and cultivators. However, the young master of the Heavenly Coffin was a vicious bandit. Naturally, he had no scruples. Su Fong's Heavenly Secret Life, shrinking art, shackled the Spider of Fate's body. The young master of the Heavenly Coffin couldn't sense it. After taking the Spider of Fate, he naturally couldn't wait to cultivate it. I didn't expect the young master of the Heavenly Coffin to come here and steal the treasure in the chaos tide. Since you're here, I won't let you go. This time, not only will I take back the Spider of Fate, but I will also take your life. Looking at the young master of the Heavenly Coffin, Su Fong's heart suddenly surged with fierce killing intent. The young master of the Heavenly Coffin also sensed Su Fong's killing intent. Su Fong was wearing the hateful faceless mask. Not only his appearance, but even his aura had changed. Naturally, the young master of the Heavenly Coffin did not recognize him. Who is that? Hateful faceless. He is also the first genius of a human race, Su Fong. The young master of the Heavenly Coffin was not surprised when he learned of Su Fong's identity from a North Xian expert beside him. This person escaped into the sky ravine and still came out alive. Extraordinary. This person is indeed extraordinary. I took his Spider of Fate, so he must think of a way to take it back. Moreover, This person is so extraordinary that he will be a great threat to me in the future. I must find a way to kill him in this chaos tide. The young master of the heavenly coffin thought for a while and also wanted to kill Su Fong. In his opinion, killing Su Fong now was as easy as the last time. While Su Fong was sensing the young master of the heavenly coffin, Dongxian Wuhan's divine thoughts suddenly reached him. Su Fong, I heard that you were ostracized in the western Xian mountain. Even your token was snatched from the Hu people. Instead of being bullied in the western Xian mountain, why don't you return to the eastern Xian divine domain? Come with us to the treasure hunt this time. You are also a disciple of the Dongxian Daozu. If you come with us, the western Xian mountain will have nothing to say. It's fine. It's better for me to be alone. Su Fong politely declined Dongxian Wuhan's good intentions. Then, Chen Tianqing also transmitted his thoughts to Su Fong. Su Fong, it seems that you have offended many people. Many people want to kill you. Since you and I are both disciples of the Daozu, I will let bygones be bygones. When the treasure hunt begins, I will allow you to follow the cultivators of the heaven-chasing peak. When the time comes, I will give you some treasures. What do you think, junior martial brother Su Fong? After that, he sneered complacently. Su Fong smiled disdainfully. Ever since Chen Tianqing suffered another setback at the Tongxin Gate, he had completely turned into a petty person. Moreover, with Su Fong's current strength, it will be difficult for him to find a match in the Dao Void realm. Why would he take him seriously? Su Fong ignored Chen Tianqing's mockery and buzzed like a fly. The cultivators of the Hu people were also secretly discussing Su Fong. The treasure hunt in the chaos tide this time is, firstly, to do our best to snatch the treasures. Secondly, to try to kill Su Fong. Hu Chang's nascent spirit voice, which was filled with killing intent, spread through the minds of all the Hu people cultivators. A Hu people cultivator followed and said indifferently, "Don't be careless. Su Fong has advanced to the upper Dao profound realm in such a short time. He must have the strength to crush ordinary Dao Void Realm cultivators. Other than the Dao Void Realm cultivators, no one is allowed to attack him." This person was the Dao Void Realm Daoist of the Hu people. He was also the most powerful cultivator in the treasure hunt in the Chaos Tide this time. His name was Hu Lingyi. Not only the Hu people, but some powerful cultivators of the Yi clan, Hong Tian Divine Realm, and Qi Tian Divine Realm were also eyeing Su Fong covetously. At the highest point of the tide-observing pavilion, those Dao saints were waiting for the chaos tide to erupt while looking down at the cultivators. They were secretly predicting who would be the biggest winner in the chaos tide this time. The Western Mystery Mountain will naturally take the biggest share of the treasures in the chaos tide this time. However, the Supreme Xian Bao may not land in the Western Mystery Mountain. At the mention of the Supreme Xian Bao, even the eyes of these Dao saints became incomparably hardy. Chapter 3056. I wonder how many Supreme Xian Bao will appear in this heaven tide eruption. How many? In the recent chaos tides, the number of Supreme Xian Bao appearing has been decreasing. There was even one time where not even one appeared. I reckon that the treasures in the foreign race world on the other side of the chaos tide have already erupted. It's already not easy to have one Supreme Xian Bao appear this time. The powerful treasures in this chaos tide, Dao profound realm cultivators have no chance of getting their hands on them. In the end, they will definitely fall into the hands of those dozen or so peak Dao void realm experts. Just as the Dao Saint experts were secretly discussing, Xianzheng suddenly looked at Xian Mountain's first elder of punishment and said with a smile, "Su Fong." This child showed off his ability in the Jiushuan Heaven selection. This seed heard that when he was in Xian, he shocked the world with a single brilliant feat in the Tongxin Gate test. This chaos tide treasure snatching, presumably, he will also shine brightly. First elder of punishment said faintly, "Su Fong. His foundation is unstable. His Dao heart is impetuous. He still needs to be sharpened. In this chaos tide treasure snatching, he is still not qualified to compete for the top treasures. To be able to get a few high-level king grade treasures is considered good luck. Xianzheng smiled embarrassedly and asked, Su Fong is a Shixian mountain cultivator, Daozu's disciple. Why does First Elder of Punishment not think highly of him? First Elder of Punishment stroked his white beard and shook his head with a sigh. This child is indeed shockingly talented. Almost no one in the human race can compare to him. Moreover, he has great luck and great fortune. However, this chaos-tide treasure snatching is not a competition of luck and fortune, but strength. Su Fong's upper Dao profound realm cultivation base is accumulated by elixirs and spiritual objects. How can he compete with those Dao void realm cultivators? In Shixian Mountain, almost all the cultivators thought that Su Fong's upper Dao profound realm cultivation base was accumulated by the resources given by Shixian Daozu. It was normal for the great elder of punishment to view Su Fong this way. Who people's Dao saint who sneered disdainfully among Dao profound realm cultivators. Even Su Fong isn't considered top-notch, let alone that there are still numerous void Dao powerhouses. If he is as overconfident and arrogant as Tian Xian and Zhou, he might have died in the chaos tide. Hupa, are you saying that Hu people want to kill Su Fong in the chaos tide? In Patian suddenly sneered. Hu Po's deep eyes exuded coldness, but there was a smile on his face. I didn't say that. Su Fong has many enemies. Hu people aren't the only ones who want to kill him. In Patian chuckled. I'm just afraid that this time someone will be like Zhou Tian Xian, not only failing to steal the chicken, but also coming home shorn. Hu Po snorted coldly, the murderous intent in his heart growing fiercer. Tuo Qinji suddenly spoke. I heard that Su Fong is being ostracized by some people in Sichuan Mountain. Even Dongshuan Supreme was alerted and asked about this matter personally. When the chaos tide is over, I will bring Su Fong to Dongxian Divine Domain. Humph, the top genius of the human race, is being ostracized and discriminated against. It truly makes one's heart cold. Sichuan doesn't want such a genius, but Dongxian does. The Dao Saints of Sichuan Mountain didn't look too good. About half a year later, rumble. A rumble like muffled thunder came from the area where the airflow was surging. The chaos tide is about to erupt. Someone shouted, and all the cultivators on the spell altar stood up, including those Dao Saints. They all looked over. Boom, boom, boom. It was like a volcano eruption, but it was 10,000 times more terrifying than an ordinary one. The chaos void within 100,000 miles was shaking. Waves of turbid airflow, the thickest of which was 1,000 miles wide and the thinnest of which was only a few hundred feet wide, erupted from the void. The chaos airflow that was cold and deathly still surged in all directions. Amidst the erupting airflow, one could see a large amount of material fragments, mixed with the bones of other races, incomplete and strangely shaped treasures, and gemstones that emitted a strange xianguang. Treasures, so many treasures. They're all treasures from other races. Each one of them is worth a fortune. The cultivators on the spell altar exclaimed in surprise. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Thousands of cultivators flew out of the altar impatiently, flying toward the chaos void. Who would have thought that they would run into the boundary outside, tide-observing pavilion? Boom! The eruption of air caused a wave of chaotic waves to sweep over, crashing into the barrier, causing the entire tide-observing pavilion to shake. The terrifying impact penetrated the boundary, and the aftermath hit hundreds of cultivators who were close to the boundary and wanted to rush out to grab the treasures. A dozen of them died immediately, and the rest were injured at the same time, crying out in pain. High up in the tide-observing pavilion, a punishment hall elder said indifferently, "This is only the first wave, and it's also the weakest. The treasures coming out are all ordinary treasures. Why are you in such a hurry? When the power of the eruption subsides, you'll naturally be released to search for treasures." The cultivators calmed down, but their eyes were still sharp as they looked at the treasures floating in the overflowing waves. After waiting for 6 hours, the punishment hall elder said in a low voice, "You can go out now." As soon as he said that, the boundary outside, tide-observing pavilion, suddenly disappeared. Many cultivators rushed into the chaos void with incomparable excitement and anticipation. However, there were still hundreds of cultivators left on the altar. Young Lord Heavenly Coffin, exalted Empyrean Spring Autumn, head Elder Chang's son, and the rest of the powerhouses were all among them. These cultivators were all powerful Tao void powerhouses. Due to the treasures that appeared in the first wave erupting heavenly tide were all very ordinary, these powerhouses were confident in their strength and disdained to snatch those ordinary treasures. They waited for the second wave, as well as the most powerful third wave, before making their move. Su Fong mixed in with the many cultivators and entered the range of the chaos heavenly tide. The moment he stepped out of tide-observing pavilion, he instantly entered the shocking shackles and tremors. Such a terrifying place. Tao Lord cultivators entering the chaos heavenly tide would instantly be shaken to death by the chaotic frenzy tide. Tao profound realm cultivators were unable to withstand such shocking shackles and tremor impact force too. But fortunately, they had tokens. The moment they entered the range of the heavenly tide, the token immediately released a protective divine might, blocking more than half of the surging shackles and impact. Even though the vast majority of cultivators were still shackled, the threat was not great. The heavenly tide was still erupting. Inside, there were also treasures appearing continuously. Some cultivators flew straight towards the place where the heavenly tide was erupting. A portion of the weaker ones searched the surroundings for treasures that had been ejected by the heavenly tide previously. For a time, within tens of thousands of li of the heavenly tide, all the cultivators were frantically searching for treasures. Su Fong activated his purple fate Dharma body and used his sensory ability to sense the aura of powerful treasures. In the end, Su Fongda was disappointed. The purple fate Dharma body did not react at all. Clearly, there were no truly powerful treasures in the first wave eruption. However, he was not so sure. The purple fate Dharma body could sense the aura of the Xianbao, but might not be so accurate towards foreign treasures. For example, the bronze oil lamp that Su Fong had snatched from Divine Lord Jin Xian was definitely an unfathomably powerful Xianbao. However, the purple fate Dharma body did not react at all to it. No matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Because of that gray beetle, Su Fong was now poor again. Even though he did not fancy ordinary treasures, he could only search for treasures like the other Tao profound cultivators. Who asked him to be poor now? Su Fong flew through the undulating waves of chaos, using his great perfection Dharma body to constantly sense for treasures. His harvest was considerable. In half a day, Su Fong had collected more than 100 treasures. The highest grade was a foot-long finger bone with an astonishing aura. It was probably worth a peak supreme grade Xianbao. The other treasures were mostly mid-grade and superior grade. Whoosh! Just as Su Fong was flying, a chaotic current swept over him like a giant wave. At the top of the wave, a black divine tree with golden divine inscriptions rose and fell with the wave. Although the divine tree was only 3 feet long, its aura was astonishing. It was actually at the level of a king-grade treasure. Even if it was not worth a king-grade Xianbao, it was still worth more than a peak supreme-grade treasure. I have the purple fate Dharma body. My luck is pretty good, Su Fong said with a smile on his face. He was about to put the piece of divine wood away. Unexpectedly, right at this moment, a figure leaped out and instantly appeared nearby the divine tree, and then he waved his hand and sucked it into the Tao Palace. Ha ha! My luck is heaven-defying. I actually obtained such a shocking treasure. I'm rich. I'm rich. It was a middle-aged man from the Imperial Sky Divine region, and his cultivation was at the intermediate Tao Profound realm. After he obtained the black divine tree, he instantly roared with complacent laughter. You're getting happy too early. That treasure doesn't belong to you yet. Hand it over. Su Fong spoke in a cold and indifferent voice, and then his formidable will erupted with a bang and enveloped the middle-aged man from the Imperial Sky Divine region. Su Fong, the middle-aged man's laughter stopped abruptly. After that, He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Su Fong, even though you were once the #1 genius of the human race, you were only the #1 expert in the Tao Lord realm. Could it be that you're still the #1 expert in the Tao Profound realm? If you want to seize my treasure, then use your strength to do so." The middle-aged man had obtained the treasure with great difficulty, so how could he be willing to hand it over? He immediately executed the will visualization technique and erupted with the energy of his will that suppressed everything to charge at Su Fong's shackles. Bang! 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 Under the impact of the middle-aged man's will, Su Fong's will remained firm and unmoving. With Su Fong's current cultivation and Tao heart, how formidable was his will? How could it be shaken by a Tao Profound realm cultivator? Hand over the treasure, otherwise I'll shatter your Tao heart. After that, Su Fong issued a command in his heart, and a strand of the will of slaughter overlapped once more, and it directly suppressed the middle-aged man's Tao heart to the point it was on the verge of shattering. Here, the expert from the Imperial Sky Divine region knew that he would die at Su Fong's hands if he didn't hand over the treasure, so he had no choice but to hand over the Black Divine Tree Scroll to Su Fong. Hand over all your storage rings as well. Su Fong shouted coldly in a domineering manner. The middle-aged man shouted furiously, "Su Fong, are you looking for treasures or plundering? Can't I plunder at the same time?" Su Fong laughed coldly. The expert from the Imperial Sky Divine region had no choice but to hand over all his storage rings to Su Fong. Chapter 3057. This profound Tao cultivator had collected a lot of treasures and was also quite wealthy. At the same time, Su Fong also found a good way. Robbing treasures was faster than searching for treasures, and it was much more exciting. In particular, robbing the cultivators of the Imperial Divine Realm and the 5 Divine Clans would definitely be more interesting and give him a greater sense of accomplishment. After making up his mind, Su Fong sneered and left quickly. He stopped searching for treasures and focused on the 5 Divine Clans, the Imperial Divine Realm, and other cultivators and forces who had a grudge with him in the past. With Su Fong's current strength, even if he suppressed his cultivation to the Upper Profound Tao Realm, as long as he did not encounter powerful figures of the Upper Profound Tao Realm, he could easily suppress them. In the next few days, Su Fong robbed a total of hundreds of cultivators from the 5 Divine Clans of the Middle Mystery, including the Hu people and the Yi clan, as well as some experts from the Imperial Divine Realm. Su Fong did not hold back and robbed them of all the treasures they had obtained from the Heaven Tide, as well as all their own assets. The harvest was truly astonishing. Those who could participate in the treasure hunt in the Chaos Tide were all powerful figures. The experts that Su Fong had plundered were all very wealthy. In addition, their gains from the Chaos Tide were also shocking. Every one of them was filthy rich. Su Fong's wanton plundering finally bade farewell to poverty, but he could not be called nouveau riche. Su Fong gave the gray beetle the resources he had plundered and some of the useless treasures that had erupted from the Heaven Tide. The gray beetle was indeed a formidable glutton. It ate everything, even the fragments of the treasures, which made Su Fong shake his head. Just as Su Fong Da was wantonly plundering the treasures and resources of other cultivators, similar scenes played out in the entire area where the Chaos Tide had overflowed. Some of them fought for the treasures spewed out by the Sky Tide. Some of them were like Su Fong, plundering the treasures in a frenzy. It was not uncommon for them to even kill others to snatch the treasures. Compared to these vicious and merciless experts, Su Fong was considered to be benevolent. The Chaos Heavenly Tide's treasure hunt was just that cruel. It was completely different from the competition between the geniuses during the Jiuxuan's Heaven's Choice period. There were no rules when it came to treasure hunt. There was only the law of the jungle. For the sake of treasures and creation, all restraints were thrown to the back of their minds. They wantonly plundered and killed crazily. Boom! Boom! Qin Tianqing led more than 40 heaven-chasing peak experts to cast Shixian's Supreme Formation, surrounding Dongxin Wuhan, Dongxin Lai, and the other Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples. Qin Tianqing had made thorough preparations for the Chaos Heavenly Tide's treasure hunt. Although his personal strength was not strong, there were quite a number of experts on the heaven-chasing peak. Furthermore, they had mastered a powerful formation. With over 40 people casting it at the same time, the power of the formation grew endlessly, crushing the disciples of the Eastern Profound Heaven Pavilion again and again. In terms of strength, Dong Xianwuhan was far superior to Chen Tianqing. However, there were only a dozen Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples in total, and they were trapped in the formation. No matter how they struggled, they could not break out of the formation shackles. Dong Xianwuhan, hand over all your treasures and your storage rings, and this seat will spare your life. Chen Tianqing shouted domineeringly toward the inside of the formation. He was very pleased with himself. Dong Xianwuhan shouted, Chen Tianqing, you despicable scoundrel. If you dare, fight this seat alone. Chen Tianqing said triumphantly, You, Dong Xianwuhan, are also a famous genius of the human race. Back then, you even snuck into the Yao race's world to gather information about the other races. Why would this seat waste my strength to fight such a powerful person? This is treasure hunt, not some competition between geniuses. If you want to blame someone, blame Su Fong. Who asked your Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples to be so close to you? Dong Xianlai let out a thunderous roar. Western Profound Tianqing, you despicable scoundrel. Chen Tianqing said with a murderous aura, This seat is now Chen Tianqing, not some Western Profound Tianqing. If you don't hand over your treasures and storage rings, then don't blame this seat for being ruthless and suppressing all of you. Suddenly, Su Fong leaped out with a wave of chaos. He sneered disdainfully. Chen Tianqing, who are you suppressing? His voice was still reverberating when a murderous intent surged out. It formed a bloody prison world in an instant and enveloped the dozen heaven-chasing peak experts. Then, a blood-red saber light surged like a river of blood and swallowed the heaven-chasing peak experts. Under the impact of the cold and sharp murderous intent, the heaven-chasing peak cultivators cried out in pain. Their Tao hearts were shaken and their wills crumbled instantly. The formation that trapped the Eastern Profound Pavilion disciples collapsed as well. Dong Xianwuhan and the rest charged out of the formation. Chen Tianqing was shocked and furious. Su Fong, the punishment hall has long had a rule that forbids you from attacking your own sect. How dare you ignore the punishment hall's rules? Su Fong sneered. You are really forgetful. I have already said that I will treat the Western Profound Mountain the same way they treat me. Su Fong. My current identity is not some odd solitary peak elder, but Su Fong himself. Su Fong, it seems like you really want to betray the Western Profound Mountain. When the time comes, the punishment hall will punish you. Let's go. Chen Tianqing was about to leave with the heaven-chasing peak cultivators. Su Fong suddenly sneered. Did I allow you to leave? Chen Tianqing was stunned. He then shouted angrily, What? Are you going to rob this seat as well? In a heavenly tide treasure hunt, everyone can be robbed. How can you, Chen Tianqing, be an exception? Your current identity and background are of no use here. Hand over the treasures you took in your storage ring, then scram. Since you don't care about being from the same sect, don't blame this seat for being ruthless. This seat is looking for a chance to defeat you and wash away the shame of being chosen by the Jiushuan. Chen Tianqing's battle intent burned. He released his thoughts and turned them into the 10,000 heavenly wheel, which rolled toward Su Fong. I have already told you during the test at Tongxian Gate that you are no longer qualified to be my opponent. Su Fong sneered disdainfully. A massacre heavenly wheel with monstrous killing intent collided with the 10,000 heavenly wheel. Boom, boom, boom. The collision caused a series of earth-shattering explosions, causing the chaos wave to become even more chaotic. Chen Tianqing's 10,000 heavenly wheel lasted for a dozen breaths of time before it finally shattered. Su Fong's massacre heavenly wheel, however, did not diminish in power. It pounced towards Chen Tianqing and was about to crush him. I didn't expect him to be so shockingly strong. Chen Tianqing was shocked. and his confidence collapsed again. Only now did he remember that when the chosen one of Jiuquan was defeated by Su Fong, Shixin Daozu once told him that there was a kind of person who could never be surpassed. Compared to such a person, one could only suffer setbacks again and again. Chun Tianqing believed Shixin Daozu's words without a doubt, but he had never thought of Su Fong as someone who could not be surpassed. Only now did he realize that he was very, very wrong. However, what Qin Tianqing did not know was that Su Fong's current strength was the result of suppressing his cultivation base to the Dao Profound realm. If he did not suppress his cultivation base, how could he be qualified to fight with Su Fong? Suddenly, a sword formation swept over and shattered Su Fong's massacre heavenly wheel. It turned out that a powerful elder of the Western Mystery Mountain, whose cultivation base had reached the middle stage of the Dao Void realm, had intervened and resolved the crisis for Qin Tianqing. Interfering with my Su Fong's affairs is making an enemy of my Su Fong. Seeing that you are from the Western Mystery Mountain, hand over the treasure you stole, and I will let you go. Su Fong raised his eyebrows and shouted domineeringly at the elder of the Western Mystery Mountain. My treasure is right here. Why don't you come and take it yourself? The elder sneered disdainfully. As you wish. Su Fong's blood fiend Dharma body flashed out of the Dao Palace and pounced on the elder. His physical body also activated the wasp wing Xian Bao and charged towards Chun Tianqing. Dong! The blood fiend Dharma body activated Massacre's heart, and the sound of the heavenly Dao erupted, shaking the elder until he vomited blood. Su Fong, I will remember this. In his shock, the elder borrowed the remaining power of the impact of the heavenly Dao voice and took the opportunity to escape. The blood-evil Dharma body could not react in time and could only watch him escape. However, Chun Tianqing could not escape. Whoosh! Whoosh! Blood vines wriggled out of Su Fong's body and bound Qin Tianqing tightly. Strands of blood seeped into Chun Tianqing's body and Holy Ji Palace. Then, they swept up some of his blood qi and storage rings and retreated into Su Fong's body. Chun Tianqing, you should understand now that you're just a clown in front of me. How dare you try to compete with the Su Fong? To be a disciple of the Daozu like you is a disgrace to our Su Fong. Get lost. Su Fong waved his sleeve and sent Chun Tianqing flying like a fly. Chun Tianqing opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His qi became weak, and his will became depressed. This time, his Dao heart had suffered a heavy blow and would be difficult to recover. Su Fong, I will never be able to surpass you. Under the protection of the other heaven-chasing peak cultivators, Qin Tianqing quickly left with a heart full of unwillingness and frustration. Su Fong, thank you. Dongxian Wuhan and the other Heaven Pavilion cultivators came forward to thank Su Fong. Only then did Su Fong realize that there was an acquaintance among them. It was Heaven Pavilion's elder, Kuei Ziyu. Kuei Ziyu no longer had a trace of arrogance in front of Su Fong. He also did not have the domineering spirit of the youngest elder of East Profound Heaven Pavilion. Instead, he was full of shame. I'm also a disciple of the Dongxian Daozu. Why are you thanking me? I'm going to continue snatching treasures. Take care, everyone. Su Fong cupped his fists at Dongxian Wuhan and the others and continued to look for the next target. Su Fong has now grown to a height that we need to look up to. Dongxian sighed helplessly. During the Heaven-chosen Blood Valley Elite competition in Jiuquan, they were all experts who looked down on Su Fong. Now the two sides had completely swapped positions. Everyone felt that it was a little surreal. As time passed, it was no longer so easy for Su Fong to snatch treasures. The treasures scattered around had mostly been divided up by the cultivators. Moreover, the cultivators from all sides had gathered together. Before a powerful treasure appeared, Su Fong did not want to reveal his true strength. It would be difficult for him to snatch any more treasures. There were no more treasures to be found. Chapter 3058. Su Fong also came to the place where the heavenly tide erupted, waiting for an opportunity to seize the treasure. Boom! Boom! Shockingly chaotic airflow spurted out continuously. Occasionally, a treasure would be swept out, by the airflow. Before it landed, there would immediately be cultivators swarming up and fighting for it. Every cultivator's eyes were red, and some even lost their minds. They fought crazily, and there were people dying constantly. Boom! The largest airflow in the center exploded again with a loud bang, sweeping out in Xianbao. That was a strangely shaped treasured saber. It was covered in rust, but it emitted an ancient and bloody aura that even the chaotic airflow could not conceal. It was definitely not an ordinary Xianbao. That's a king-grade Xianbao that surpasses the peak of supreme grade. Although it's a little damaged, it's definitely a king-grade Xianbao. Moreover, it's an ancient treasure of a foreign race. It's even more valuable than an ordinary king-grade Xianbao. I didn't expect such a powerful king-grade Xianbao to appear in the first wave of the heavenly tide. Sensing the aura of that Xianbao, countless cultivators' eyes turned red. Without waiting for the airflow to recede, they all flew towards the treasured saber. Some experts who were watching from the periphery and were originally disdainful of snatching the treasure were instantly energized. They charged towards the highest point of the heavenly tide without regard for anything. Boom! A figure charged out like a bolt of lightning, and he utilized a jade seal that erupted with supreme divine might that ruled over all living beings in the heavens and the earth, causing those cultivators that were charging towards the king-grade dark treasure to be shaken off balance. Even some void Dao cultivators, including some upper void Dao cultivators, were unable to move under that terrifying, dominating aura. This Xianbao belongs to me, Hu Chong. Who dares to refuse? So, it was Hu Chong who made the move. As expected of the number one person in the Dao profound realm of the Hu people. Activating the Xianbao with a cultivation base at the peak of the upper Dao profound realm, he actually made those void Dao cultivators want to avoid the sharp edge. Of course, this was also related to Hu Chong's Imperial Jade Xianbao. Hu Chong's Imperial Jade Xianbao was slightly inferior to Hu Ditian's Imperial Jade Seal of Destiny. However, he was able to activate more than half of the Xianbao's power, which was far beyond Hu Ditian's. In addition, many of the cultivators who were fighting for the treasures, especially those powerful void Dao cultivators, were also quite afraid of Hu Chong's identity and did not dare to attack him with all their strength. Hu people don't lack king-grade Xianbao, but it's not a bad idea to give this saber to the younger generation. Hu Chong revealed a domineering smile. Although he spoke disdainfully, his eyes were burning with pride. Then he activated the Imperial Jade Xianbao and released a divine aura that enveloped the Xianbao. The saber flew out from within the jet of air and shot towards Hu Chong. Unexpectedly, right at this moment, a blood-red vine swept over and actually pierced through Hu Chong's Xianbao's divine aura, and then it swept the Xianbao and flew towards the side. It was Su Fong who'd seized Hu Chong's treasure. Su Fong, I was just about to look for you after you wantonly plundered the cultivators of my clan. I never expected that you would actually dare to seize my treasure. You're courting death. Hu Chong was instantly furious when he saw Su Fong had interfered and seized the treasure that was within his grasp. He activated the Imperial Jade Xianbao and emanated the supreme, divine aura of an overlord that stood supreme above everything, and he intended to crush Su Fong. The gaze Hu Chong shot at Su Fong was filled with disdain. As far as he was concerned, Su Fong was only a formidable genius that reigned supreme in the Dao Lord realm. Presently, even though Su Fong possessed a cultivation at the advanced stage of the Dao Profound realm, he definitely relied on external forces to improve his cultivation so swiftly in a mere period of time. So, his foundation was unstable, so his strength was naturally not worth mentioning. Not to mention seizing ordinary cultivators, he actually intended to seize a treasure from Hu Chong. He's truly courting death. Su Fongdao really thinks that he's the number one genius in the Jioshuan continent. At this moment, he's the number one expert in the Jioshuan continent, and he dares to look down on everyone. The cultivators from the Yi clan and the other divine clans, and some experts from the Western Mystery Mountain and the other divine territory scoffed at Su Fong, and they were waiting for the scene of Su Fong being crushed. Roar! A mysterious violet energy rumbled out from Su Fang's body, followed by the roar of a dragon. The might of the Xianbao instantly enveloped Hu Chang's imperial jade seal Xianbao. Buzz! 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 Hu Chang's imperial jade seal Xianbao actually began to tremble. It seemed to be extremely terrified, and the sovereign's aura it emanated vanished in an instant. After Su Fang's Violet Fate avatar fused with the Violet Fate Dragon, not only did it bring him supreme luck, its ability to devour cultivators' luck became even more shocking, and its ability to control magic treasures was more than 10 times greater than before. This was the difference between Su Fang and Long Tianci. Long Tianci possessed the Violet Fate Dragon, and his luck was astonishing. Good luck would descend upon him at any time. He could pick up treasures while walking on the streets, and good luck would descend upon him while sitting at home. On the other hand, Su Fang's Violet Fate avatar fused with the Violet Fate Dragon was not like Long Tianci, whose luck would descend upon him at any time. Instead, it transformed into a kind of luck that helped him defy the heavens and rise to power. Furthermore, Su Fang's Violet Fate avatar was cultivated with the Violet Qi Dharma spirit as the foundation. It possessed the supreme ability to control the divine Xianbao. This was something Long Tianci did not possess. Hu Cheng, other than relying on the powerful Xianbao, what other abilities do you have? Without the Xianbao, you're nothing. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me, Su Fang? In the instant that Hu Cheng's imperial jade seal Xianbao's power was suppressed, Su Fang sneered disdainfully. His figure flashed, and he appeared within 1,000 feet of Hu Cheng. He punched out at Hu Cheng. Boom! The sound of heavenly Dao, like a heavenly drum, rolled out, blasting Hu Cheng and that imperial jade seal, Xianbao, flying out together. Fortunately, Hu Cheng possessed the extraordinary defense of the Xianbao, defending against Su Fang's attack. However, he was still shaken by the sound of heavenly Dao until he vomited blood. His Dao heart and Dao palace were nearly shattered. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There was no longer any contempt in their eyes when they looked at Su Fang. Only now did people understand that the current Su Fang was no longer the genius chosen by the heavens in Jiushuan, but a powerful expert who possessed the ability to crush Dao profound cultivators. I originally thought that after advancing to Dao profound realm, I still had the chance to have a vigorous battle with Su Fang. Now, it seems that my thoughts were actually so laughable. Looking at the awe-inspiring Su Fang, the genius from the Li clan, Li Zhan smiled bitterly and helplessly. Not only Li Zhan, but many other Jiushuan geniuses who had the same thoughts as him were also filled with bitterness in their hearts. Let's go. This heavenly tide treasure hunt is over. Chen Tianqing's heart was filled with despair. He was completely disheartened as he left the area where the heavenly tide erupted. Join forces and kill him. Hu Cheng was injured by Su Fang's punch. Aside from being shocked, intense humiliation and killing intent surged in his heart. He transmitted his thoughts to the experts of the Yi clan, Li clan, and the other 5 great divine clans of the central profound divine realm. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More than 30 cultivators charged towards Su Fang almost at the same time. Not only were there Void Dao experts of the 5 great divine clans, but there were also powerful experts from the Qi Tian divine realm and Hong Tian divine realm. Suddenly, the violent and chaotic air currents in the surroundings suddenly calmed down. The erupting heavenly tides also stopped at this moment. The second heavenly tide is about to erupt. Everyone used divine light instantaneous transformations, but due to the shackles, they were unable to teleport. Everyone could only use their movement techniques or activate their profound treasures to retreat to the back. The experts who were charging towards Su Fang no longer cared about killing Su Fang. They were so frightened that they retreated one after another. The terrifying power of the heaven tide, when erupted, let alone Dao, Xian, and Dao, Su cultivators like them. Even Dao Saint experts would have to retreat. Sensing the terrifying heavenly tide that was brewing, Su Fang was also frightened. He activated his Xian Bao and flew backward like a bolt of lightning. About half an hour later, everyone retreated to the tide-observing pavilion, and the outer boundary was reformed. Rumble. A loud rumbling sound like muffled thunder came from the chaotic void. Then, with another boom, a wave of chaotic aura erupted from it. The chaotic aura soared into the sky, forming a light pillar that was tens of thousands of feet tall. All kinds of images flashed in the light pillar. There were stars, mystic worlds, mountains, forests, lofty palaces, and also scenes of foreign experts who were obviously different from human cultivators. There were also images of refining pills and treasures. There were countless images. Some of them were fleeting, some existed for a long time, some were very clear, some were blurry, and some overlapped with each other, making it difficult to distinguish. What's that? Why would such a strange thing erupt from the chaotic heavenly tide? All the cultivators were shocked as they stared dumbfoundedly at the scene before them. That's a time mirage. The time mirage is a world of an alien race that has already perished. The traces of its existence in the past were too powerful, so they were branded in the long river of time. Now, they're being spewed out by the chaos tide and transformed into scrolls. I didn't expect a time mirage to appear when the chaotic heavenly tide erupts. Next, a supreme Xian Bao will definitely appear. These time mirages are supreme treasures. Ordinary cultivators didn't know, but those Dao saints did. At the same time, they also understood what the time mirage meant. They all stared at the images and focused on memorizing them in their minds. Su Feng figured out the origin of the images from the exclamations of those Dao saints. Without hesitation, he used the heaven's eye to see through the images and memorized them. Although the time mirage was an illusion, it was no different from reality. It was just that it happened in the past. The information contained in each image was extremely precious. From it, one could obtain knowledge of cultivation, alchemy, and treasures that the human world didn't have. The cultivation civilization of the human race was gradually formed by learning from the cultivation methods of the foreign races. Therefore, the value of the time mirage that appeared now far exceeded the value of the treasures that erupted from the first chaotic heavenly tide. Even the Tao saints couldn't help but be tempted. If they could comprehend even a little bit from it, it would be of great help to their cultivation. Some cultivators were still in a daze. The head elder of the Western Mystery Mountain let out a thunderous roar. Hurry up and memorize those images. Those images that you memorize can be exchanged for treasures at the Western Mystery Mountain according to their value. If the value is high enough, you can ask for King Great Xian Bao, pills, or other conditions. The other Dao saints also sent voice transmissions to the cultivators of their respective factions. Whoosh. Chapter 3059. Some cultivators took out jade slips, trying to copy the time mirage from the chaos tide into the jade slips to store it. Who knew in less than 3 to 5 breaths, the sound of jade slips shattering could be heard. Hu Chong looked at those cultivators who were in a sorry state and sneered disdainfully. There are so many scenes in the time mirage, and they even contain extremely profound auras and profundities of the Grand Tao. How can ordinary jade slips contain them? Then he smiled proudly, and with a flip of his hand, he took out a mirror with a silver mirror. The mirror was vertical, facing the place where the time mirage appeared. Who people were worthy of being the number 1 divine clan in Central Profound Divine Realm. Hu Chong, a Dao Profound Realm Dao disciple, actually had such a powerful Xian Bao and could copy the time mirage. All the cultivators on the 8 altars stared at the time mirage without blinking. Some cultivators, like Hu Chong, who had powerful Xian Bao, and some who had extraordinary abilities, naturally had the advantage. The mirage that the heaven tide spewed out wasn't of much use to the Dao saints. However, they were able to comprehend some useful things from it, and it was also very useful to the younger disciples. Hence, the Dao saints at the highest point of the tide viewing pavilion were all fully focused. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Not long after, there was a slight buzzing sound around many cultivators, and a light circle enveloped these cultivators. It made these cultivators as bright as stars, and there was a powerful pressure that spread and shook within the light circle, forcing the nearby cultivators to retreat. This was because the memories of the time mirage from those cultivators caused the great Tao and heavenly Tao to form a strange resonance, which caused such a phenomenon to appear. Instantly, there were a total of 9 altars, and other than the one that belonged to Southern Profound Divine Realm, the other 8 altars lit up with dazzling light circles. Especially those powerful Tao Void Realm cultivators. Their light circles were much bigger and brighter than others, and at the same time, it indicated that their talent, ability, and gains this time far surpassed other cultivators. Some powerful Tao Profound cultivators, because they had extraordinary Xianbao or abilities, the light circles around them were also very shocking, and their gains were also very shocking. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Su Fong used his heaven-prying eye, and at the same time, he used the Joshuan Limitless Sutra Heart Sutra to comprehend the scene in the time mirage. Who would have thought that some of the images contained the profound meaning of the great Tao that caused the Joshuan's Limitless Sutra to flicker continuously? Some of the scriptures were ones that Su Fong had already grasped in the past, while some were ones that Su Fong still only knew a little about, and some were extremely unfamiliar and difficult to understand. The scenes in the time mirage made Su Fong's understanding of the scriptures that he did not know much about or were unfamiliar with become clearer. At the same time, it also improved Su Fong's mastery of the Joshuan Limitless Sutra. Not only that, along with the flickering of the Joshuan Wuji Sutra, inside the blood evil Dharma body, the heart of the alien race expert slayer was also beating along with it, vibrating out the wonderful rhythm of the heavenly way. This caused Su Fong's comprehension of the scriptures to become more realistic, and at the same time, caused the time mirage images to become clearer. It also dispelled the various kinds of pressure that came from comprehending the time mirage images. Su Fong felt that the Joshuan Limitless Sutra was like a boundless ocean that could contain all the great Taos. And the profound meaning contained in the time mirage images were like rivers that converged into the ocean, causing the ocean to boil and become even deeper. Although the halo around Su Fong was not as big as the powerful void Tao experts like the exalted Venerable Spring Autumn and the young master of the Celestial Coffin, it was very deep, vast, and much brighter. The pressure that it released was also more shocking, forcing the surrounding Western Mystery Mountain cultivators to move further away from him. Puff, 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 some of the Western Mystery Mountain cultivators around Su Fong, under the pressure of his aura, had their halos forcefully shattered. Those Western Mystery Mountain cultivators were both shocked and angry, but they were also shocked and fearful of Su Fong's performance. He's actually so domineering and lawless. A middle-aged Western Mystery Mountain cultivator felt Su Fong's pressure. Seeing this scene, his eyes flashed with anger. This person was an expert at the peak of the Upper Void Tao realm, and his status was also very extraordinary. He was the Deputy Peak Lord of the Ningxue Peak. The Ningxue Peak was a training ground second only to the main peak in the Western Mystery Mountain, and its Peak Lord was also a Tao Saint expert. As the Deputy Peak Lord, this middle-aged cultivator's strength and status were evident. Although he was angry at Su Fong, he did not attack. The opportunity to comprehend the time mirage was rare, and he naturally would not waste his energy on other things. Time passed. The time mirage images were still erupting from the heaven tide, and at the same time, many treasures were shooting out. However, at this moment, everyone was completely focused on memorizing the time mirage images, and had already lost interest in those treasures. Comprehending the time mirage was also a severe test for a cultivator's cultivation realm. If one's realm was not high enough, not only would they not be able to see the profound meaning within, they would also suffer a backlash. Puff, puff, puff. Some Tao profound realm cultivators were the first to be unable to bear it. One after another, the light circles around people shattered. Some had blood seeping out of their eyes, and they vomited blood. Even their Tao palaces started to shatter. The injured cultivators hurriedly stopped comprehending and started to close their eyes to rest. An hour later, There were already very few Tao profound realm cultivators who could continue comprehending. Only powerful Tao profound cultivators like Hu Chong, who relied on the Xian Bao and grasped extraordinary abilities, could still barely comprehend those images. Boom! The aura of the chaos heaven tide suddenly changed. The images produced by the light pillar decreased by more than 10 times. The scenes of cultivation, battle, pill refinement, and treasure refinement in the images, the great Tao profundities contained in them, were clearly a level higher. What was displayed in the previous images were Tao profound realm and Tao void realm, and what was displayed now was Tao saint realm. Kacha! Hu Chang's mirror Xian Bao immediately shattered into pieces. He also spat out a mouthful of blood and almost fell headfirst onto the ground. His aura instantly became dispirited and listless. The time mirage was actually a kind of heavenly Tao imprint. If one's cultivation was insufficient, even the powerful Xian Bao could not unleash much of an effect too. The other Tao profound cultivators also all suffered the same backlash as Hu Chong. There were even some whose Tao palaces shattered, and they were seriously injured. Even some ordinary Tao void cultivators had no choice but to stop comprehending the mirage. The profundities contained in the images were too high level and already surpassed the limits that they could bear. The remaining powerhouses, the light circles around them, also became even larger, releasing an incomparably majestic pressure, forcing those Tao profound cultivators and ordinary Tao void powerhouses to leave the altar one after another. Even though these cultivators did not have the qualifications to continue comprehending, practically every one of them gained a lot. Through those images that they remembered, returning to closed-door cultivation, their realms would definitely have a considerable improvement. On the 8 altars of the 100,000 cultivators, only 200 to 300 people were left to continue comprehending the mirage. Those who could continue to stay on the altars were naturally some of the most elite Tao void powerhouses. Among them, there were even some who had the powerful ability to battle with Tao saint powerhouses. However, Su Fong was an exception. The cultivation base that he displayed now was only at the upper Tao profound realm. Hu Lingyi, Hu People's #1 Tao void realm expert. Hu Lingyi has the largest light circle around him. He will definitely be the one who perseveres to the end. Who is that person to actually release 6 blood coffins to comprehend the time mirage? Why does it look exactly the same as the legendary heavenly coffin Tao Saint's ability? Not only Hu people, the Tao children of the Yi clan, Li clan, and the other 5 divine clans are also extremely shocking. They will definitely be peerless Tao saints in the future. Qi Tian Divine Regions Feng Zhou, Han Tian Divine Regions Duan Juren, Dongshuan Supreme Venerable Spring and Autumn, and those elite Tao Void powerhouses of Haotian Divine Region, Yuxian Divine Region, Northern Xian Divine Region, all have the potential to become Tao Saints. Those powerful peak masters and elders of Shixian are also extraordinary. Looking at those peerless figures, the cultivators who were chased out of the altars were all shocked. Cries of surprise could be heard incessantly. Su Fong is still on the altars. Impossible. How is this possible? Even some ordinary middle and upper Tao Void Realm experts were forced out of the altars. What qualifications does he, a mere upper Tao Profound Realm expert, have to stay on the altars? Those who stay on the altars now don't need any qualifications but ability. Su Fong can stand side by side with the other elite Tao Void powerhouses. It's enough to show that he has this ability. Extraordinary, very extraordinary, the #1 genius of the human race. In just a few 100,000 years, he has actually grown to such an astonishing level. When the crowd saw Su Fong, the shock in their hearts became 10 times stronger. Some were doubtful, some were in disbelief, and even more were exclaiming in admiration. Dongxin Wuhan, Li Zhan, and the other peerless geniuses who once competed with Su Fong in the Jushuan Heaven selection had no choice but to helplessly admit that in these years after the Jushuan Heaven selection, Su Fong had once again defied the heavens and rose up. At this moment, Su Fong had already left them far behind. Su Fang's current height was difficult to catch up to and even harder to surpass. Moreover, this distance would only grow bigger and bigger. In the end, it would be so big that they would need to look up. While the cultivators of Shixian Mountain were shocked by Su Fang's performance, the feelings in their hearts could be said to be extremely complicated. Almost 2 hours passed. Some of the cultivators who were pushed down from the altars rushed into the area where the heavenly tide was overflowing. They went to snatch the treasures that were spurted out by the heavenly tide. On the altars, some Tao Void Realm experts also found it difficult to continue. Some had blood seeping out of their eyes. Some vomited blood and fainted. They had no choice but to give up on comprehending. In the end, there were only slightly more than 20 powerful Tao Void Realm experts left on the 8 altars. The halo around Su Fang became brighter and brighter. The radiating area also became bigger and bigger. It radiated out to a distance of 10,000 feet and was still extending to the surroundings. At this moment, Ningsue Peak's Vice Peak Master, who was the closest to Su Fang, was disturbed by Su Fang. In addition, he had already reached his limit. It was already difficult for him to continue comprehending the time mirage. If I can't continue comprehending the time mirage, don't even think about it. A ruthless look flashed in Ningsue Peak's Vice Peak Master's eyes. He unleashed his divine aura. Along with the halo around him, he swept out and struck Su Fang's halo ruthlessly. Boom! The divine aura of Ningsue Peak's Vice Peak Master that struck Su Fang's halo felt like an egg hitting a rock. It shattered layer by layer. Not only did the halo around Su Fang remain unmoved, there was also a shocking rebounding force that sent Ningsue Peak's Vice Peak Master flying out of the altars. After stabilizing his body in a sorry state, Ningsue Peak's Vice Peak Master spat out a mouthful of blood. Not only was his aura dispirited, his Tao Palace was also shaken. Many cracks appeared. Without millions of years of closed-door cultivation, it would be very difficult for him to return to his previous peak state.